The young guy had been oppressed for years by irregular work even on holidays, as well as constant pressure from his superiors. And tax increases and no sign of wage growth made the situation even worse. Terrible work in a company where people were nothing led to the fact that the young employee lost consciousness from overwork, but then somehow incredibly regained consciousness in a different place. What the guy saw in the mirror after his awakening shocked him, because now he found himself in the body of a small unknown boy. After a while it became obvious that there was a rebirth into the body of the son of some lord. But it did not cause any regrets, because it was wonderful to spend beautiful days as loving parents, and those terrible times from the past life were left behind. But as it turned out, in this new world was not all good and not all was calm, and once there was a large-scale attack of demons, which changed the situation in this world. The boy's parents were from those people who did not resist the demons and fled from their possessions, and it was impossible to find out the location of all the people who saved their lives, and the lands of the Alents were deserted. After the terrifying storm from the demon invasion stopped and everything became calm, young Lord Ryle Alezen felt lonely while peeking at his possessions. After he had been reborn, he had thought he would never have to do hard work again. But now he had no other choice, and that was what was most frustrating. Ryle, like many other people, also wanted to escape from these territories. But if he did so, it would be considered treason against the king. It was a very difficult situation, because there was always the threat of returning demons, from whom it was unlikely to be possible to hide for long without food. He wanted to live in peace and tranquility more than anything else in his life, but when he was alone, it was hard to do so, because he had to do various important things, and for this purpose the young lord decided to gather people. The only thing that gave hope to the young lord was his good inheritance from his parents. There was enough money to not worry about. Usually the necessary laborers and servants could be hired without any problems, and one could simply post the necessary vacancies with a merchant. However, this remote area was simply terrible, for it was located in the forest near the demon territory, and one could hardly expect many people to want to live here. Lord Ryle still decided to write a job ad and decided to offer good working conditions, because he knew from experience how it was to work in terrible conditions. The young lord offered excellent working conditions with 2 days off a week with no overtime and a salary of 30 silver coins a month. There was also the promise of bonuses and pay raises once a year for regular workers. Such an incredible announcement became very much discussed in the royal capital. But in this world, no one had ever encountered such conditions for work, and so many potential workers began to be very suspicious, because it seemed to them that in the end they would still be cheated. But one girl was still interested in this proposal. The girl liked the absence of any additional rules while working for the young Lord Ryle, and she was the person who first decided to find out all the details. The girl was an experienced warrior and was ready to go even to the most dangerous lands of Alenza in order to get acquainted with the lord who made such a strange announcement. After a while, Ryle was surprised when he saw in the courtyard of his mansion a huge monster, which could no longer harm anyone and was defeated by the mysterious stranger. The beautiful lady with a huge sword impressed the young lord, who was very happy to see such a strong man in his devastated domain. The girl was surprised to see two young guys and asked if he was really the lord of these lands. And then the beautiful stranger, convinced that the lad was the lord, decided to act. The girl so quickly descended to earth from the back of a huge monster that Lord Ryle was afraid, but the stranger showed the very announcement for which she was here. The girl looked like a very confident person and kept looking questioningly at the young lord, hoping to evoke a spark of emotion from him. Ryle agreed that it was his ad and asked the girl if she really wanted to work for him. The stranger confirmed her willingness to cooperate on such terms, and the boy blushed with embarrassment. Young thanked the girl warrior for her courage and responsiveness and admitted that he would be very happy to cooperate with a new person. But the lady wanted to hear something more. In fact, she did not immediately believe that she was hired so easily and did it without any test. But Ryle explained it all by the absence of any competitors for the job. After all, she was the only person who had come to him thanks to the ad. It was not surprising, because no one wanted to work in such a remote place, and even near the territory of demons. But even the appearance of a single employee made the young lord really excited. Then the boy inquired about the dead dragon. Well, as it turned out, it was the girl's trophy. Then beautifully eyed stranger told how she hunted in a large uncharted forest here nearby, and was able to destroy this huge monster without much effort. The fact that a fragile girl alone hunted a huge dragon fascinated the guy, and he found it hard to believe. But as it turned out, the girl was not just a warrior, but an adventurer of S rank, and for her such trials were not the first time. and the girl explained that she was actually a former adventurer of the highest rank named Sword Ellen. Ryle had heard stories of a man by that name once before and knew how powerful he was. The appearance of such a tough adventurer delighted the young lord, and he could no longer hide his emotions. Then Ryle decided to ask Ellen if she was really ready to move to this territory and live here. But the former experienced adventurer agreed without hesitation, because she had never seen such a great offer anywhere else, and therefore saw no reason to refuse such an opportunity. Ryle asked if he understood correctly that Helen was not an adventurer for money, and as the girl admitted, she had a hard time on her way to a high rank. But then Ellen sadly said that even high-ranking adventurers get into trouble, and Ryle realized that this girl must have faced hard times and decided to change her life. But in any case, he appreciated her help and willingness to cooperate, and why he asked her what she wanted to do in his domain. Since there were no other people here at the moment, she could choose whatever she wanted. After that, the young lord decided to give Ellen a little tour and explained that this province used to be home to many people, but now it was empty after the demon invasion. It was because of these terrible events that his parents' lords died, and all the people who inhabited this land left it. That's why it's now hard work to rebuild the population. Ellen listened carefully to the sad story of the young lord and decided to hunt for demons that live in these territories. Ryle was happy about the offer, as his territory was under constant threat from demons. He apologized for forgetting to introduce himself and said that he was looking forward to working together to rebuild the land. But Ellen suggested not to use unnecessary formalities and various annoying rules during communication, because they cause only one inconvenience and waste time. Ryle thanked the girl and promised not to create any inconveniences during cooperation. Ellen was pleased with the acquaintance and was not disappointed from the first impressions. Talking until the evening, Helen and Ryle did not even notice how it was already dark outside, and then the young lord offered his first employee to have a good rest and gain strength before a difficult job. The next morning, the young lord was surprised at how quickly the girl had packed up and was already apparently going on a hunt. Ellen did not want to waste time and was eager to get to work as soon as possible. But then Ryle unexpectedly asked to take him along on the hunt. But this surprised the young adventuress, because she doubted the young lord's ability to fight, and during the hunt one could be in a very dangerous situation. Ryle really wasn't some experienced warrior, but had minimal skills in swordsmanship and magic, and so he asked permission to see Ellen in the process. The right places and the right people and the right tasks are the very priority for any lord who must make efficient use of the available resources. Ryle expressed confidence in the girl's ability to fight and therefore was not afraid to go hunting with her. Ellen still agreed but warned that she was not very good at defending other people. But the young lord was eager for adventure and suggested that they go hunting immediately, because they still had a lot of things to do and he did not want to waste time. Soon the friends found themselves in a dense and dark forest, which really felt eerie atmosphere. Ellen paid attention to the lord's condition and realized that Ryle was a bit scared. The young lord did not deny the obvious, and after a few minutes the experienced adventuress heard the monster approaching and leaving Ryle behind rushed to attack. The discovered monster turned out to be a true rank wolf king. Ellen's abilities fascinated the young lord, and the girl assumed that there were many high-rank demons in this forest. Such a quick victory over a demon was certainly a great achievement, but the adventuress did not know what to do with the defeated monsters in such conditions. Ellen explained how until now the Adventurer Guild had bought all the monsters and she used them to earn money, but now she would have to act differently because she could no longer cooperate with the guild. Therefore, she would be very grateful if the young lord bought these monsters. Ryle thought about it and decided that selling defeated demons was a significant source of income for adventurers, and he hadn't thought about it before. But now Ryle offered to leave the monster in this place and maybe some other merchant would buy it later. Well, he is willing to offer 80% of the total amount, and 20% he will take for the mediation and storage of monsters. The 80% reward made the girl emotional, and Ryle thought that maybe he had offered a bad deal. But then the guy reminded that in addition to the money for hunting, he would also pay a monthly salary of 30 silver coins. But the girl continued to worry even more when she heard about the extra silver coins, and it made the young lord think that he was going to pay Ellen too little. Although it was all very strange because even on 20 silver coins one could live quite well for a month. But perhaps Ellen wanted more than you, after all she was a great adventurer. But in fact the girl was stunned, because such conditions were too good for her to be real. While the young lord was trying to find a solution to this difficult situation and come up with more favorable offers for the girl, Ellen was surprised by Ryle's generosity and did not understand what he was thinking about now. But the young people's thoughts were disturbed by the monsters who most likely smelled the odor of uninvited guests in the forest. Ellen readied her weapons again and advised the Lord to stay behind. After a few minutes, she was able to destroy 3 Ranka wolf kings, 2 wyverns, and 3 poisonous snakes. It was a great reward, and Ryle, watching the battle, realized how insignificant his swordsmanship skills were. Ellen was a really strong warrior, and as she explained, it was all due to daily training. The young lord wondered if she could not earn enough with such abilities and decided to come here. The girl explained that in fact adventurers spend a lot of money because they have to pay for transportation, accommodation, and other important things necessary during travel. Especially the life of an active adventurer is connected with weapons and armor, which can sometimes cost a lot of money, and the task is associated with difficulties. The girl's story made the young lord think, because he learned a lot of new things. Ryle didn't know really should he pay for weapons and armor for Ellen. Though as far as he knew, in a good company, even the latest smartphones and computers, delicious free lunches, and even new movies as entertainment were provided for the employees. Ryle remembered his past hard life and decided that his land should be the territory where people would want to work. And his task is to make this work with decent conditions, and then he will have a lot of people. In the end, the young lord promised to cover the cost of weapons and armor for Ellen. The girl was incredibly surprised by another display of generosity, and asked for an explanation for wanting to pay for everything. Ryle, recalling that he was the lord of these lands, took the responsibility to provide Helen with weapons and armor, but the girl was so delighted that she advised to first find out the cost of weapons and armor. But the noble lad was willing to spend the necessary amount of money to lower the likelihood that Helene would be wounded in battle or while hunting. The adventuress still couldn't believe what she heard and only looked at the guy in surprise. All these magnificent conditions forced the girl to spill her emotions out, and she asked, why does the young lord do this at all? After all, even in the guild she was paid only half the cost of monsters and certainly did not offer to pay for weapons and armor. The girl demanded to immediately explain what Ryle was really trying to achieve. But the guy did not understand what he should do to convince the girl of his intentions, because she continued to doubt the labor conditions provided, calling them too good. Ryle asked the girl to calm down and called it all a misunderstanding, because he just wants his territories to be filled with people, and Ellen cannot doubt his intentions and trust him completely. Then Guy told that in fact he wants to create favorable conditions for all his subordinates, known suffering and feelings of a man who was ruthlessly exploited. That's why he will always value human labor and treat people as an irreplaceable resource, and Ellen for him is now an excellent employee who can handle dangerous situations. Ryle promised to do everything possible so that Ellen would not suffer and especially not to die while working, because it is important for him to treat his employees well. And all those people who will appear in these lands in the future will have to live peacefully and without problems, feeling this place as their home. These words made the girl apologize for her doubts, because now she believed the Lord. Then kneeling down, the experienced adventuress promised from now on to spare no effort to protect the young lord and his domain and to thank him for the conditions. Ellen had always had a definite plan for her life and was used to living in harsh conditions, for she considered it normal. However, when she saw that strange announcement, she decided to take the chance to change her life. The girl adventurer again wanted the freedom that she lost many years ago, and she could not imagine that she would be able to meet such an incredible young lord. And now she's found the job she's always been looking for and should be grateful for it. But Ryle should not be so polite to him, for she had said herself that she did not like unnecessary formalities and emotions in communication. After the young men had cleared up all the points of contention, they decided to return home after a great hunt. Ryle doubted that they would be able to carry so many monsters together, but the girl was of a different opinion. Eleni explained that they could bond a wyvern and a king wolf, and Ryle started to help in this endeavor with interest. Helen was really happy at this point, thanking the Lord for starting a new life. Ryle hoped that more new people would be coming soon, and Ellen assumed that with such good conditions, many would want to join them. Soon the young men made their way out of the forest and could already see the Lord's estate in the distance. Ellen was grateful to Ryle for the chance to change her way of life, and the boy hoped to revitalize his holdings. Meanwhile, a lone wagon was slowly moving along the forest road, and the girl sitting in it decided that she had already reached the place and would soon meet the right person. The girl was the second person who was interested in the young lord's great offer to join the inhabitants of his territories, and she wanted to find out everything personally. The past life of a young lord ended suddenly and very tragically, because he died at work from overwork. But it was just a new beginning, and the guy was reborn. Immediately after his rebirth, the boy was surrounded by the care and love of his parents. But one day everything ended and the monsters invaded the Lord's property, driving out all the inhabitants. Rael ended up being the only one left who lived in all those lands, and it was he who became the young lord. Living alone was very lonely and sad, and Rael dreamed of changing that. As a result, the young lord decided to attract new people to his territories by promising excellent working conditions, and gradually his plan began to bear the first fruits. Ellen became the first inhabitant and a great defender. Helen Lawrence had been an adventurer of S rank in the past, but now she decided to change her life and found herself next to the young lord and enjoyed the delicious food he prepared. Rael liked cooking and was willing to cook something else for the girl. Now the loneliness didn't feel so strong, because the young lord could talk to another person, and in the future there might be new people. That was exactly what happened one day when Rael and Ellen were having lunch. An adult male had visited these lands taking advantage of an advertisement and offered to bring food and necessities. This visit interested the young lord and he wanted to find out more details soon. As it turned out, this man was an employee of a music company, and he knew Rael's parents, so he was immediately hired. Rael introduced Ellen to the new employee and called her an excellent hunter. The young adventuress felt proud to be called the first citizen of Alenza territory, although she looked a little comical because of the usual crumbs of food on her face. Rael helped the girl wipe her face, which made Ellen embarrassed, and then she told the new resident that she was responsible for bailing out the demons. The man was impressed, for he knew how strong this adventuress was. The new resident asked the young lord how he had managed to attract such a strong adventurer, and Rael explained that he had only had to offer a good job on reasonable terms. And in the end everything worked out well, and now Ellen was by his side, which meant that he could be calm for the safety of his lands. The girl herself was glad of this meeting, calling it fate, but the man still didn't understand the conditions for an S-rank adventurer to accept the offer. But if it was here, then it meant that she was happy with everything and the job suited her completely. The young lord immediately offered his new supplier to buy the destroyed demons, because he would be able to make a great profit on them. The merchant was impressed by the number of demons and offered 200 gold coins for all the monsters. They were of high rank and in excellent condition, which greatly increased their value. It was a lot of money, because 200 gold coins was enough to live without problems for the rest of his life. And now earning that much in a few days looked like a real achievement. All this was of course thanks to the adventurer Eleni. Now Rael thanked the girl for such success. While the young lord had been persuading the adventuress to take her share of the bounty and Eleni had refused, the other girl had been trying to get out of the wagon. The merchant offered to find suitable people and bring them back on his next visit, which of course pleased Rael. Meanwhile, the girl had fallen to the ground and was already on her feet. The young lord then asked the merchant if he could open a music venue in his territory, for if the population continued to grow, they would need entertainment. Rael of course promised excellent conditions for all employees. The merchant was surprised at such an offer and promised to carefully select the necessary employees. Then it was necessary to load all the monsters onto the wagon, and this was Ellen who decided to do all the hard work. After the monsters were in the wagon, the merchant said goodbye and set off. The man was impressed with the young lord and realized how different he was from his parents. Perhaps it was this attitude to people that attracted the experienced adventurer Ellen. It meant that such a good man could be dealt with. But then the merchant remembered how he forgot to tell the young lord about the missing saint from the church, although it was doubtful that the saint could get alone to such remote lands. After the meeting with the merchant, the young lord wondered what he should do next and asked Ellen if she was going to hunt again today. The girl was ready to hunt. After all, there was a great method of making money. But then the experienced adventurer felt someone's presence in the bushes and ordered him to come out immediately, because if he did not come out, he would be destroyed. After these threats, a woman's voice was heard from the bushes asking not to kill. Everyone was surprised to see a young girl appear, for she was too young to travel alone, especially in such dangerous lands. The girl was very nervous, which made her blush, but then she pulled out a crumpled piece of paper with Rael's announcement on it. The young lord realized that the girl had made such a dangerous journey to get a job. Rael of course was ready to agree and accept the girl, but Ellen advised him not to rush, because it was very dangerous to accept strangers without checking, because the girl could be a thief. Rael did not agree with this, but the adventuress continued to look suspiciously at the young girl. But in the end, Ellen still promised to believe the stranger, but advised her not to do anything wrong. The young traveler continued to worry a lot, especially after the young lord decided to interview her and find out what job would be best for her. Rael promised that it would be no big deal and was surprised that Ellen decided to be present during the interview. The adventuress reminded that her job was to ensure the safety of the Lord and the territory, and now she had to observe the new person. For starters, it turned out that the girl's name was Lula, though she didn't mind being called just Lou. Ryle figured that the girl had some good reason for changing her name a bit. Then it turned out that Lou was very fond of reading various books and was also skilled in healing magic. This was great news. The enchantress healer was a useful person for the future development of the territory. After all, people are inherently sick and should be treated by someone. But Ellen continued to be skeptical of Lou, which surprised Ryle more and more. But the adventuress explained that she had the impression that she had seen this girl before, but did not remember where. Lou started to get very worried at this point and suggested that they discuss other things. Ryle asked what exactly Lou would like to do, but the healer girl's main condition was to be able to appear in front of as few people as possible. At the end of the interview, Ryle stated that Lou was hardly a bad person and he didn't expect any problems from her. Ellen, despite her attitude, promised to support any decision of her lord. Ryle of course allowed the healer girl to stay and become a resident of his lands. This pleased Lou, for she had doubted her abilities when she traveled here. Ryle formally introduced himself as the lord of these lands and explained that Ellen was in charge of the demon hunt and ensuring the safety of all the inhabitants of this territory. The young lord promised the girl to take care of her and was surprised at how timidly Lou accepted his handshake. It was all just excitement and Lou was looking forward to working together. Ryle then suggested that they figure out exactly what kind of position would be best for Lou, and since she has healing magic, she can effectively treat the injured, although the girl isn't sociable and would have a hard time interacting with people. But Lou immediately apologized for her selfishness because it was impolite to state her terms. Ryle was impressed by the healer's modesty and asked her to feel more free to socialize. Ellen tried to explain to the new citizen that even though Ryle was a lord here, he had no honor or dignity. Such words angered the boy, for he had not expected such a thing. Ryle asked not to say such words about him, but as it turned out, Ellen was praising the young lord in such a way, because it was the first time she saw such a mediocre man. Lou, watching the argument, realized that the adventuress was just teasing the guy. It was so strange that it amused the humble healer. Ryle reminded her that she could call him by his first name without any titles, but Lou was still embarrassed. As they strolled through the huge mansion, Ryle wondered what exactly the healer had been doing before, given that she tried not to socialize with people. But Lou tried to avoid this conversation and noticed the huge number of books in the mansion. But as it turned out, the huge room was just a bookkeeping room and the books were documentation. Lou asked for permission to look at the documents and Ryle admitted that he had no idea what was in them and that it all belonged to the time when the parents were doing business. Suddenly, the healer called the young lord's parents fine people. Ryle assumed that the girl knew them personally, but Lou didn't confirm it, continuing to hide her excitement. Then, after looking at some documents, Lou found out that they recorded a large amount of expenditure on the inhabitants of these lands, and this speaks of the kindness of the former lords. And all this information is different from what she knew before. Ryle remembered that his parents really thought about their people, and in the old days, there were more than 100 people living in this territory. This place was very lively and his parents were highly respected by the people, but alas, things were different now. The adventuress Ellen expressed her confidence that the current young lord was also a fine person, and Ryle thought that Ellen once again suspected something. But Ellen reminded about the conditions of cooperation with the young lord because there were no additional loads and work on holidays. And also the lord provided a salary of 30 silver coins a month, and most importantly, there was very good food. But Ryle reminded her that he was a lord and not a cook, and he didn't have any account book at his disposal, and he didn't know how long he could keep spending money. At this point, Helena had the wonderful idea to give the job to Lou. Ryle asked the girl if she could keep a competent account of expenses, for such a job would allow her not to socialize with people. Lou was delighted by the suggestion, though she wasn't sure she could do it. But the young lord had already made up his mind and appointed the modest girl as chief accountant. Then Ryle remembered other matters that also require his attention and therefore decided to end this conversation. But Lou asked permission to look at something else important to her. Ryle of course gave her permission to look at any documents and books that Lou deemed important to her, but he reminded her that the work had to be finished by sunset. Lou began to study the archival records and decided that she could get a lot of work done if she stayed here. But at some point she heard a familiar voice searching for her and urging her to return home to the faithful immediately. Lou immediately said that she had no desire to go back home, because she was entrusted with important work here. It was too tiresome to talk to the believers, because all you had to do was smile and wave your hands. But the voice of the priest kept insisting and reminding of the voices of the faithful who would always haunt the Holy Maiden, and she would not be able to ignore the calls of the suffering for long. It was true, and many voices were waiting to communicate with the saint who was born to live as a saint, for that was her true purpose. But Lou did not want to hear any voices and wished for a different destiny. But luckily it was just a dream, and when the girl woke up, she realized that she had not heard any voices of the faithful, and was now in a completely different place. Meanwhile, the young lord was thinking about how difficult it would be for him to organize his territory and people. Lou met Ryle and asked him what he was doing, and as it turned out, the young lord had decided to work the land. This surprised the young healer, but despite his title, Ryle was willing to do any work. Lou then decided to offer her help, but Ryle reminded her of her job as an accountant. She continued to insist she really wanted to try working in the field. Lou told him that until now she had not been allowed to work with the land, and now she wanted to change a lot of things in her life. Ryle agreed though and let her help him out a little. While pulling weeds, Ryle asked the girl why she was not allowed to work in the ground, because she was not so much protected by the people around her. But these questions upset the girl, and the young lord decided that he should not touch the subject, because after his questions the atmosphere became tense, and Lou became sad. It was sunny outside, and Ryle asked why the girl was still wearing her hood, because you could take it off and feel the wind blowing. But Lou didn't want to open her head, saying she was comfortable. Lou finally decided to change the subject and suggested that since there were weeds growing here, it meant that the soil was acidic. So for a better harvest after they had tilled the soil, it would be a good idea to sprinkle it with eggshells. The young girl's knowledge of soil tillage surprised Lord, and as it turned out, Lou had read books about it. Ryle confessed that he was very happy that the girl was here because her knowledge would help to develop agriculture. The healer also liked it very much here, because no one forced her to appear in front of crowds of people. Ryle decided that the girl was punished in the past, and that's why she had such a negative attitude towards people. That's why the young lord suggested the girl to do whatever she wanted, because here she could be only herself and she didn't know anyone anything. Lou had never heard such words, and it shocked her. Working in the fresh air and socializing was something Ryle liked, for the young lord had spent too much time alone and strived for it. And now it seemed that everything would be fine. The rising breeze was a real treat on a hot day, and Ryle suggested that Lou spread her arms out to her sides and feel the pleasant coolness as well. The girl, after a little thought, decided to do so and thought of the past she had no choice. Throwing off the hood, which was a real shackle, Lou believed that now her life would change. But the strong currents of wind suddenly made the young healer lose her balance. Ryle immediately reacted and prevented Lou from collapsing to the ground. The saint healer, feeling the touch of a man for the first time, instantly blushed and apologized for her behavior. But Ryle asked her not to worry and just call him by his first name. Soon Ellen appeared and made Lou blush even more. Ryle told how they were working together to clean the beds, and Ellen also decided to join in the activity. Meanwhile, while the friends were working and socializing, a lot of demons were watching over Alens's lands. They knew that the previous lords had died, and here to stay only of the young and inexperienced son. Demonic creatures decided not to miss this opportunity and expand the possessions of the king of demons, because they were sure that they will not meet any resistance in these devastated lands. Ryle was in this world thanks to his rebirth, and even after many years he didn't understand how it had happened. But now he was busy improving his territory and was happy to see the new people. In the future, the young lord hoped to increase the population of his territory, and even the smallest success made him proud of his achievements in the status of lord. Every day Ryle felt elated in the company of the two girls. But suddenly the peaceful environment was savagely shattered by a deafening explosion. Ryle and Lou were badly frightened and did not understand what exactly was happening and how such a huge explosion on the field could even happen. But as it turned out, happened thanks to Ellen, and the power of this adventuress was almost limitless, and thus she wanted to help plow the field, but overdid it. The result was really not what was hoped for, because instead of tilling the soil, she created a huge hole. The adventuress decided not to stop there. Ellen offered to try again and promised to do it right. But Ryle advised against it, as farming was not what the adventuress was suited for, but Ellen persisted. Ryle would have admired the enthusiasm of the young adventuress, who stopped at nothing to achieve her goal. But the young lord still decided to help her and handed the girl a tool. But the second attempt turned out to be exactly the same as the first, and there was a deafening explosion. This was yet another confirmation that farming was not something Ellen should be doing. Although during the second attempt Ellen made much less effort, and the hole was much smaller than the previous one, and this interested Saint Lou. Lou praised Helene for her progress, for she had really realized her mistake and tried to correct it on her second attempt. These words instilled confidence in the adventuress, though Ryle still doubted Ellen's abilities. In the end, the young lord solved the problem with a compromise. Ryle offered Ellen to stay here and continue her training, because they didn't need such holes in other fields, and Ryle himself wanted to continue practicing the ground with Lou. Ellen agreed and thought about how she should distribute her strength during the stroke, while Ryle thought about how he could fix all those horrible holes in the field in the future. Lou was completely immersed in the process of cultivating the soil, and had already stopped thinking about her past. Ryle tried not to distract the girl and was genuinely pleased with how happy Lou was. The Holy Maiden apologized for her behavior, because in her opinion one shouldn't have fun while working. Such foolishness Ryle had never heard before and stated that it wasn't true at all. Still, it was amazing how happy the girl was about such a simple job, and as Lou said, she had never done anything like this before. The healer was genuinely happy and free at this moment, though he realized how strange it looked to Lord Ryle. But the guy didn't want to upset Lou either and praised her for her diligence. After a while, Ellen reported her progress and told him that if she held the tool with 2 fingers, no holes appeared in the ground. This was wonderful, and Ryle invited the adventurous woman to join her. Working together with a great team and in a friendly environment was much more fun, and nothing like Ryle had felt before his rebirth in this new world. While Lou and Ryle continued to work the land, the experienced adventurer Ellen noticed suspicious activity in the nearby thickets and prepared to fight the monsters. There could be no mistake, for 3 civilians were being approached by a pack of angry monsters led by a bloodthirsty demon. Ryle was terrified and did not know what to do. The demon was confident in his victory, and these lands remained only a common child of the former lords, and it was only necessary to kill him and appropriate these properties. Therefore, the monsters already knew the main goal in advance. The lord was a little surprised to see 3 people on the field, but he thought that in front of him is just a miserable farmer who works the fields in the company of women and does not pose a threat. Ryle began to realize that these demons came from the west and that there could be many more of them, so it was wise to flee immediately to the manor. But Ellen was ready to defend her lord and decided that there was no need to run away. The experienced adventuress, armed with only a tool for tilling the soil, was confident in her abilities and promised her friends to easily deal with so many enemies. Ryle was still not sure of the success of this battle and wanted to ask Ellen not to take any unnecessary risks. But the adventuress reminded him that this was the job she was here for. Demona noticed the girl with a hoe in his hands, laughed, and ordered the monsters to immediately attack. But Ellen at this point already prepared to destroy all in their path. The monsters were rapidly approaching and didn't even realize what they would have to face in a few seconds, and the demon decided that people were real fools who couldn't even run away. After a moment, the ferocious monsters simply disappeared as if they were not in this field. The demon couldn't believe it and didn't understand what was happening. Cursing, the wretched humans decided to take off to find out. The demon's surprise reached its maximum when he saw a pack of his monsters at the bottom of a huge hole that shouldn't have been there in this ordinary field. Many questions arose in the evil demon's mind, but not a single right answer was there. The demon couldn't believe that only 3 people could prepare for an attack so effectively. Lord Ryle was surprised as much as the demon, because he did not even expect that a randomly created hole in the ground would be so useful in such a situation. But Ellen decided to continue to surprise everyone. Brave adventuress rushed to the attack and skillfully destroyed monsters with a regular hoe. The blows were deadly, and now the demon could hardly hope to take over other people's lands. Ellen felt in her element, because all her life this girl fought. The girl's fierce gaze made the demon for the first time in his life feel a chilling fear from the man who destroyed his squad. Lord Ryle along with Lou were enthralled by the spectacular sight, and for a moment they thought they were dreaming. But of course it wasn't a dream, it was just the work of an S-rank adventurer. Demon was in despair because he was unable to change the situation on this field, and he only had to watch the remaining monsters flee in the hope of saving their lives. The demon commander realized his mistake because he underestimated the enemies, and Ellen completely ruined his plans to take over the territory. As a result, the demon decided to immediately report the incident to his king. Ellen was pleased to see the results of her work, but a little regretted that the monsters ended too quickly, and Ryle was already rushing to thank the adventuress. Contrary to the young lord's fears, Ellen was uninjured and didn't even have time to drown herself. Lou and Ryle were happy and expressed their gratitude for saving their lives so magnificently. Ryle was still worried about the lives of his men and asked Ellen not to take unnecessary risks when they could simply retreat and choose other options for rescue. These words hurt the adventurer's ego, which reminded her that while she was here no one should run away. The girl decided that Ryle simply did not believe in her strength, but the Lord apologized and promised to trust her in such situations. Ryle offered Ellen to take as much land as she wanted, because she was a very important employee for him and the best protector, without whom he would die today. The adventuress was happy to hear such good words from her lord, but female pride of course did not allow to show emotions, and Ellen resentfully promised to defeat all the monsters that would appear. The adventuress then explained in more detail that the monsters that would appear were indeed weak, and even the forest was inhabited by higher-ranked monsters, so in such conditions one could not worry about the safety of the territory. Ryle was impressed by the battle and suggested that the adventuress somehow adapt the pits she created into defensive ditches. But the Lord decided to deal with that later, as it was time for them to finish their work for the day. The sun was indeed already nearing sunset, and the young lord, after a productive work of course, decided that everyone was very hungry, and so he promised to cook something tasty. The girls were indeed hungry, but Lou continued to be modest and offered her help, because it seemed to her that it was too much when the Lord cooks for his subjects. But Ellen advised to trust Ryle, for he often cooked himself. Meanwhile, the humiliated and defeated demon reached the castle of his king and told him about the results of his invasion into the lands of Alenza and how he faced strong opponents. Ellen was able to destroy a whole pack of wolf monsters, and the local young lord is actively recruiting new people to populate his domain. Therefore, the situation on the border of the demon territory might soon worsen. The demon king scrutinized the information he received and was really surprised, and his loyal demon suggested that the ruler personally visit Alenza's domain. A few days later, in the capital's Royal Employment Guild, a merchant gathered people and at the request of Lord Ryle decided to find a suitable worker and asked if there were any willing workers. Most people thought Lord Rail's lands were too dangerous and located very far away from the capital, so no one was in a hurry to accept such an offer. The merchant expected such a reaction, because everyone was suspicious of such earnings. But still among those present there was a brave girl, Cat Natty, who decided to accept the offer and go to a distant land. The girl immediately explained that she has a lot of skills and will be useful to the Lord. Disregarding the warnings, Natty still called it a great offer that only fools can ignore. The cat girl was confident that Lord Rail would provide a good job and it was impossible to refuse it. The merchant immediately began to talk about the conditions and various bonuses that Lord Reed had indicated in his announcement, and it was surprising that there were no willing to take such a lucrative job. People immediately began to discuss the terms, and some regretted not being ahead of Natty. The cat girl reminded them that in this life sometimes you have to take risks, because that's usually what good traders do. In the end, the Lord's recruiter suggested that Natty pick up 10 more people for the job. The girl was shocked by the number of questionnaires, of which there were more than 600. Natty asked about working for the Lord, but the merchant advised her not to think about it, because she had other tasks to do. All this disappointed Natty, who really hated monotonous work, and her fiery temper did not allow her to do such work. But in spite of this, she was a diligent worker. After a while, Natty noticed one person and hurriedly reported him to the merchant, who after studying the document called the candidate another funny worker. The chosen candidate hoped for a new life through his work and hoped to meet interesting people in the investments of the Lord who offered such unusual conditions. Memories of his past life often visited Real. It was a terrible time when the young lad worked without weekends and dreamed of getting a job in a firm where he would be treated as a human being, though he didn't know if there was such a place. But fortunately it was only a dream that sometimes troubled the young lord, because now he had a completely different life and somehow incredible way he was able to be reborn in another world. Ryle was very happy to see Lou this sunny morning. This modest girl was still always nervous when she interacted with her lord, but she was happy to be in this beautiful place. Today Ryle decided to have a day off and asked Lou's opinion about it. But as it turned out, the girl decided to try something new in her life today and cooked breakfast for everyone. The prepared dishes really looked great despite the fact that the modest girl was preparing food for the first time and therefore was not sure of success. But that could only be understood after everyone tasted the food. Ellen didn't mind to appreciate the culinary skills of the new employee, because any business seemed to her much more fun if it was done together. Rail, after years of loneliness, was happy to be in a noisy company and thanked for the food. In those distant times in his past life when the young man was a common slave in his company, and then he couldn't even afford to have a quiet breakfast, the food prepared by Lou turned out to be really very tasty and everyone thanked her. But just at that moment, a new girl who belonged to the human track appeared and explained that she was Natty and came from the employment guild. Rael was happy to see the results of the merchant who promised to send new people. Natty explained how her lord had sent her to these lands to work for the lord. Rael was of course interested in cooperation and first wanted to know if this girl was going to open establishments in his territory. Natty was very energetic and boisterous and was eager to start cooperation as soon as possible. Natty was only worried about her age, although at this moment Rael himself did not feel too mature. But in any case, the cat girl promised to deal with any problems. Lou appreciated Natty's motivation, while Ellen was suspicious as usual and didn't trust new people. But as it turned out, Natty had not come alone, and now there were to be new residents in these territories. Rael was impressed by the girl's behavior and she immediately called her companions. All the people who arrived looked at the young lord with surprise and hoped to get a great job in this place. Natty advised everyone to thank Rael for this great opportunity. There were many more people than the young lord had expected to see, as Natty was able to pick 10 excellent candidates for various positions. Rael did not hide his positive emotions and thanked the people for their courage to come here, and Natty continued to praise the new master. Rael immediately introduced Ellen and named her responsibility for the demon hunt and the defense of these lands. The people who arrived were shocked to see a legendary S-rank adventurer here. The modest Lou was introduced as the chief accountant, and all the new residents noticed the girl's beauty and shyness. Lou was of course very shy and still avoided a lot of people. After all the residents of the estate were introduced, the young lord asked the new residents to give their names and positions they expected to work in his lands. Natty offered to handle the matter herself, and Rael was impressed by the girl's enthusiasm and energy. Natty had full confidence in her abilities, for she was an excellent merchant and skillful at communicating with people. The young lord decided to trust the new employee and called it a great day, for he was happy to see new people populating his territory and Natty could be a great assistant. Natty was very excited from the kind words of the young lord and immediately blushed. The cat girl promised to help Rael with all the problems, but then it turned out that there were only 9 people among those who came. Natty did not understand how this could be, but counting personally all the employees realized that one person from the list of names somewhere went somewhere and he had to be found immediately. But at that moment, a sleepy young man appeared nearby, who was the 10th lost employee. Rael looked closely at the strange guy and sensed an unusual atmosphere. Then the sleepy one confessed that he was impressed by the group of interesting people gathered here, with the guy looking closely at the modest Lou. Rael eventually suggested that everyone rest after the tiring journey and make themselves at home. Each new resident could choose any available house for themselves. The new residents were incredibly surprised by the young lord's generosity, and couldn't even believe that each of them had their own place. But Rael advised them not to worry and to get used to their new living conditions. The generosity of the young lord impressed the residents, who were happy to have their own homes for the first time in their lives. Rael also promised to provide everything they needed, and for that each resident should just inform him. From such words, people no longer had doubts and regrets from coming here. The young guy, who was still walking around hugging his favorite pillow, asked if the young lord really had that much money. Rael thanked the guy for his concern and assured that he had a very large reserve and was ready to provide for everyone. While the arriving residents were happy and having fun picking out their new homes, the guy with the pillow and didn't look as happy as the others, and Natty suggested that he might be a problem employee in the future. The next day, the young lord decided to get to know the new residents of his territories better, and the first person he met was of course the boisterous Natty. The girl immediately offered to help in any way she could and decided to follow her lot. Natty was going to escort Rael to show him exactly where the new residents had settled. The young lord thanked for the help and Natty to always be there when he needed her. At first glance, everything looked perfect and the new residents were enjoying the excellent living conditions and preparing to start work in their new place. Rael, like a true lord, greeted each of the residents and thanked them for their help. 5 of the new residents decided to farm. 1 man took over the blacksmith's house, and 3 turned out to be demon hunters, and now again the only man named Julius was missing. As it turned out, this strange guy had not even written a preference for his future job, and now it was necessary to find him and clarify. Unlike the other incoming employees, this guy Julius had chosen the smallest house for himself, and now Rael wanted to talk to him personally. But no one answered when they knocked on the doors. Natty decided to act and stormed into the house to find out what was going on there. Natty and Rael saw the young man and thought he was dead. But as it turned out, Julius was only asleep even though it was morning. Julius only asked why they had come to disturb him. Ryle asked him to answer one important question to find out what Yulia was going to do in the future. As it turned out, the young man had not even thought about his future work, despite the fact that the Lord had promised to meet all his needs. But in the end, Yulia asked permission to just rest at home and make it his main job. Natty was shocked by the guy's impudence and said that such a job does not exist and therefore Yuli should immediately stop idling. But Yuli was serious and insisted on his proposal. The young man tried to explain to the Lord that up to this point he had been constantly busy with hard work and was so tired that he had come here hoping to find real freedom. But Natty did not accept such silly arguments and could not understand how you can lie at home and not go anywhere. But Ryle thought a little and allowed Julius to rest as long as he wanted. Natty did not expect this from the Lord, because she realized that it was better to just lie in bed than to work. Natty advised the young lord to think about what he said, because it is wrong and you cannot keep an employee who will not bring any benefit. But Ryle heard Julius' words and remembered his past life and realized how the young lord felt. Ryle realized that to become a true lord, he still had a lot of important things to do. But he understood what it was like to constantly work and spend all his energy on it. After all, he had been in such a difficult situation before. That's why the young lord allowed Julius to rest at home until he decides to do something. Because the work that is forced to forcefully destroy the personality of a person. Natty still did not understand how it was possible not to work at all, and Ryle asked if the girl wanted to do something all the time, even when she was resting. Natty asked me to explain why I decided to take on a huge responsibility and hard work again, if he had already been in such a position in the past. After all, a lord always has many responsibilities and worries. Ryle thought about it and recognized that she did have a difficult past, and that's why he didn't want his people to go through the same thing and he had to do the right thing. Especially, he did not become a lord by choice and only replaced his parents who died during the terrible demon invasion. And so a job with excellent conditions should attract people to his domain. That's why he was able to meet the fearless Helen and the clever Lou. And by creating a place where people will want to work, you can really gather a huge number of residents, because many people are actually looking for the perfect place to live. Yuli suggested that it might be fun to be a lord, but you can't do such a demanding job just for the fun of it, because there are a lot of problems and difficulties. Julius apologized for his words and explained that he had only negative memories from his previous job. In fact, he had learned many professions and had even been an advisor to the king. Ryle was surprised, because usually the king's advisors are old wise men. But Natty confirmed Yul's words by calling him a true wise man who surpassed even the most experienced old men. The young lord still couldn't believe that this sleepy fellow was a true sage, for they were usually old and had long beards. But Natty insisted that she was right. I had checked the information before choosing Julius. Natty said that she hadn't intended to go into detail initially, but that Julius' depth of knowledge was impressive. Ryle was impressed and decided to find a good purpose for this guy. After all, the fact that such a wise man had come to work for him only spoke of the right conditions. Ryle asked the wise man to tell him exactly what the problems were in his domain and how to improve things. For starters, Julia decided to discuss the problem with the budget, and ask how much money the young lord had at his disposal right now. Ryle quickly counted all the inheritance from his parents and the money received from the sale of monsters and decided that it was about 500 gold coins. Then the young sage asked if Ryle knew how much money he would need in the future, namely to pay his wages, because each resident should receive 30 silver coins a month and it must be given out on time. And if you do the math, each inhabitant of this territory will need 360 silver coins a year. And since there are now 13 people living in this territory, then a year will need to pay 4,680 silver coins, which is about 47 gold pieces. Also, in addition to the wages, it is necessary to supply people with all the necessary things, and of course, we must take into account the cost of all the equipment, which means we will have to spend a huge amount of gold coins. This lord needs to have a clear idea of the movement of his money in order to properly and effectively manage his territory. After all, if he can't provide everyone with money, people will soon just leave. Ryle really hadn't thought about such problems before and promised Julius to follow his valuable advice. The young sage lord also told him about other important issues to consider while ruling. Julius offered to discuss the income from the sale of demons and decided that it was not a good idea to rely on just one source of income because it was very dangerous, even though Ellen could now effectively mine monsters. Ryle agreed with the wise man, because it could really be a vulnerability. Then the wise young man suggested to think about external threats, because it seems that this land has been attacked by demons for a long time. But even demons are not the only serious threat. There is a lesser nobleman to the south of here who has long been the subject of unpleasant rumors, and most likely this despicable man also wants to expand his territory at the expense of Lord Rayla's holdings. You should also be careful with the organizations from which new settlers come here. After all, the Adventurers Guild that Ellen belonged to, for example, is now suffering great losses and will certainly have a negative attitude towards Lord Rayle. These words made the young lord think, and he really realized that he couldn't be satisfied just because so many good people had come to him. Then Ryle realized that Julius was actually expressing his dissatisfaction in this way, and it was interesting. The young sage promised to work with the Lord as long as he could to protect these lands. Natty did not understand what was going on, because initially Julius said that he would just lie in bed, but as it turned out the work with the counselor could be done at home and it suited Julius. It was just such a proposal made by the young lord to the young sage. Apparently it will also be convenient to just come to Julius' house and ask about different problems and find solutions together. The possibility of working at home interested Julius, and Ryle explained that it was a great prospect for cooperation, because such conditions were suitable for him as a lord. And of course Julius can work at any time he likes until he is tired, while receiving exactly the same salary as all other employees, without leaving home. As a result, the young sage agreed to advise the lord and at the same time to rest as long as he wanted, and now they could cooperate for the good of the land. Natty still could not understand how the lord could be so soft in such a situation, because other employees would consider it a weakness. But Ryle really wanted the other people to learn something important from Julius, because thanks to this guy, no one should forget to rest and not work to exhaustion. After all, even the adventurous Helene, under various pretexts, almost every day goes on a tedious hunt and does not understand the value of rest. Julius suggested to wait a little, because it is very difficult to change human habits and thinking in a short period of time. And it is not necessary to generalize and put everyone in the same conditions, because it is better when each person adapts at his own pace. Ryle agreed with the sage, for it would be wrong to equate everyone equally. The young lord thanked the sage for his excellent advice and reminded him that they had a lot of work ahead of them. Julius promised to study all the necessary information and hoped that the lord would succeed. The young sage reminded that in fact he had already been an advisor to many influential people and no one was as honest as Lord Rayle, which meant that he had a chance for a good future. Many of the people Julius gave advice to were angry or pretended to listen to what he said, and it was all foolish. But now for the first time he was working with a lord who himself insisted on resting in his staff, and it seemed like something unbelievable. Ryle agreed with the statement that he really isn't like the other lords, and maybe that's his advantage, though really he just wants to create a good environment for his people. In the end, the young lord and his new advisor decided on the terms of cooperation. But Natty still could not calm down from everything that was happening. Julius eventually admitted that he was very tired of these long talks and decided to go back to the realm of Morpheus. That said, the young counselor promised to counsel the lord at any convenient moment for him and even interrupt his sleep for that purpose. Ryle was satisfied with the result of the negotiations and promised to come back for important information. Meanwhile, in the demon domain, the king was about to go alone to Lord Alence's domain to assess the extent of the threat on his own. The aide advised not to do so and go there could be dangerous. But the Demon King was confident in his abilities, and read the ads Lord Rayla decided to see with his own eyes a man who offers such excellent conditions for his employees. After all, if all this is really true and Lord Rayla is willing to create such a paradise for ordinary people, then it means that his possessions are an interesting place to study. The Elenian domain is a remote area surrounded by vast impenetrable forests and demon lands. And thanks to his rebirth, Ryle became a local lord and began his journey alone. But thanks to his persistence and desire to develop, the young lord was able to attract new settlers to his lands, and now he enjoyed the company of people who were already quite a lot. After some time, the young lord again decided to visit his sage Julius, and when he entered his small house he was very surprised to see the boy on a huge and very comfortable bed. Ryle was interested and immediately asked him to explain where such a magnificent bed had come from. As it turned out, the wise Julius had asked him to order this bed, and now thanks to it he could rest even more comfortably all day long. Ryle was delighted by Julius' ingenuity. The sage asked the lord what he wanted to talk about today, as he was not going to visit his advisor just to be polite. Ryle decided to talk about the employment of his workers and how he tried to change the number of working hours and days off, but even using everything his people work too much. So it would be nice to find some other effective method out of this situation. It took Julius less than a minute to come up with a suitable solution, and he suggested to think about creating a place for people to have fun. After all, in addition to work, it is necessary to create a place for people to have fun. And if there is such a place, they will try to finish work early and visit such a place. Rail was delighted with the suggestion and thought it might help solve the problem. But just to build a good place for entertainment, you will need the right place, time, and money. You also need to realize that if there is too much entertainment, the work performance will deteriorate sharply, so you need to think carefully beforehand. About himself, Julius immediately reminded that it will be enough for him to have a soft pillow and a cozy bed, and this will be his main entertainment. But of course, such a vacation is not suitable for everyone, and therefore something more interesting should be thought out. Ryle thanked for another good advice and decided to think about how to do everything right, and Julius advised to contact him on any occasion, because he is always at home. Walking through the city, Ryle thought about how in the era of slavery people only dreamed about how they would finish their working day. But now the problem is different, and it is necessary to create suitable conditions for people to rest. Also, the young lord realized that now he needed a person who could manage this important project and make a great place for the entertainment of all people. Continuing to think about the problems of his people, young lord did not notice a strange man in black clothes, who passed by called him in a displeased voice. The Demon King asked the strange guy about the name of the territory, and of course he did not know who he was talking to at this moment, seeing in front of him a common pathetic man. Ryle felt a strange aura from the stranger and was surprised by his piercing gaze and tall stature. The stranger's clothes were an unusual black color, and it made the guy's image creepy. But the young lord still decided that the stranger specially created such a unique image, and perhaps he is some kind of popular person. The Demon King, meanwhile, took out the announcement written by Ryle. The young lord decided that such an artistic person could be a real hope for him in solving his entertainment problem. Ryle explained to the stranger that he had a great job offer in hand. Demon King, considering himself a terrible lord, did not understand why the pathetic man so easily communicates with him, because he does not realize who is in front of him. Demon King, we knew that in this territory live people who defeat demons with a single blow, and perhaps there are people who are trapped and waiting for the enemy attack from foreign territories. Especially the vacancy looked too dubious, and in order to personally verify everything, the Demon King came to these lands. But to the surprise of the Demon King, no one attacked him. Rail suggested to the mysterious stranger to walk around the city and explore the grounds together, and if he wanted to become a resident of the estate, he should find out where he had come to. The Demon King thought about the possible trap, but still wondered why this guy was so careless with him. But in any case, it was a good way to scout the situation. The Demon King ended up accepting Ryle's offer and found out that he was the young lord who had written this strange announcement. The Demon King also introduced himself and gave his name as Armadius Eglisk. Ryle was shocked, because he could not believe that a Demon King could come to his lands so easily and give his name. And maybe it was just great acting. The too long name was difficult to pronounce, and the young lord could not immediately remember it, still thinking that he was some strange actor. Ryle then asked for permission to call the Demon Queen a little simpler, and the name Mao would be perfect. Such insolence of the Demon King to decide that before him is a mentally retarded person, because no one has ever addressed him like that. But despite this, Demon King allowed him to call him Mao, and Ryle suggested that they start their joint tour, and to begin with they went to inspect the agricultural fields. Inspecting the fields of the Demon King in this place, but was surprised by the lack of farmers working in this place. Ryle explained that at the moment there are still not very many people, and therefore farmers are still in short supply. But in spite of that, the available people were still working in the field and doing their best. Ryle greeted the peasants and explained that he wanted to show the land to the new inhabitant, and everyone looked at the stranger with interest. All the peasants felt a strange aura from the Demon King, but Mao himself did not see them as a threat, which means that someone else has destroyed a squad of his loyal monsters, or the demon reported the wrong information. While the Demon King was looking for any threat in this place, the young lord asked about the productivity of farmers. But the guys in the field were ready to show the results of their labor. Since they still had very few people, they had mostly started growing vegetables that could be harvested in a short time without much effort. But they hoped to grow the farm. The next plans were to grow fruits that would bring more profit, but it would take much longer to harvest the fruits. Mao watched with interest as the farmers promised the Lord to do their best to develop these areas and make a good profit. The young lord enjoyed talking to the Christians and was pleased with the results of their labor, but advised them to contact him with any questions if they had any difficulties. The Demon King noticed the complete lack of combat readiness of these men, but they were excellent at farm work and could be useful growing food. Rail didn't understand what Mao meant, and the Demon King thought that his subordinates were much stronger than these people. But still, his close monsters were unable to come up with any effective plan and constantly troubled him with problems. None of the monsters could provide food for themselves, and they were constantly looking for a solution. Only now the Demon King began to realize how stupid were his subordinates after all. They could not even organize an effective attack on such weak people, and in the end most likely made up a story of defeat. Ryle meanwhile was thinking about where to go next, because at the moment the demon hunters have already gone hunting, and the blacksmith Ragudo today off. Mao could not believe what he heard and asked if there really is a weekend in these lands, but Rail he only laughed in response and advised the Demon King carefully and read the announcement. The young lord of course realized that to a stranger the conditions in the ad seemed unrealistic, because that's what Ellen had thought at the beginning. Rail advised the King of Demons do not worry because all that is written in the ad is the absolute truth, and every worker in his domain is guaranteed to get 2 days off a week. This information shocked the Demon King, and he really envied the people living here, because the idea to create a mandatory weekend was brilliant. Ryle explained that in order to work well you need to rest properly. Mao remembered all his long years as Demon King during which he worked without a single day off, and all his subordinates constantly demanded the fulfillment of any problems and tasks. But still his demons doubted the effectiveness of the management of the domain when people will have a lot of rest. Rail at this point remembered his sage Julius, who was always at home, and decided to walk to him. Mao advised to lock Julius and the rest of the workers in the house so that they could not escape and have a good rest, because then they would have to work hard to accomplish difficult tasks. Ryle asked him not to say such terrible things to him, because he was never going to treat his people badly, and Julius actually does his work at home, so there is no problem to visit him at any convenient time. Especially in his domain, the workplace changes depending on the activity. Demon King, how is it even possible to effectively manage and develop a possession with such rules and with weekends available? Rail immediately explained that Julius is his chief advisor, and despite his age he is a wise man. Mao asked if his advice was really useful since he had gotten such privileges to be at home. Rail called Julius a real treasure that holds a huge store of knowledge and can advise in any situation. The Demon King again felt jealousy because when he asked for advice from his cronies, it turned into a festival of the stupidest ideas that could even come up with living beings, and in the end he had to decide everything himself. The Demon King was indignant, for he had come to this place to scout the situation, but now he was growing more and more enamored of the property and the Lord's management methods. Rail, on the other hand, did not want to let go of a potential employee, and asked Mao what kind of work he would like to do. The Demon King didn't think much of it, and Ryle told him about his idea to build a great place for the residents to have fun. And if Mao would agree to take on this responsible job, he could solve a lot of problems and make a special entertainment place for all the residents of these domains. The Demon King was impressed by the Lord's desire to meet the needs of his residents, and Rail tried to explain that it is very important for everyone to forget for a while, and not think about work and rest. Mao had never thought about it, but now it seemed like a good idea. The Demon King told how in order to distract himself from work in the evenings he often tried to forget himself with a glass of wine, and only thanks to the alcohol he still keeps his composure. Rail realized at that moment what a hard life Mao had lived. The young lord immediately had a great idea to organize a bar in his estate, and then he explained to the uncomprehending Demon King that this is a place for entertainment where you can drink alcohol and listen to music. In fact, in Ryle's estate was already an old bar that had not been used for many years, and it could be reanimated, and all the residents after hard work will have a nice place to relax and unwind. Rail immediately offered Mao the role of manager of this bar, and the King of Demons suddenly interested in such a proposal, because he had never done anything like this before. But the young lord explained that the work will have to be of course evening time, because the bar opens only after the completion of work. But it did not cause any problems for Mao, because he loved the dark and night. But the decision on the closing time of the bar will have to be made by the manager himself, and this caused surprise in the King of Demons. He understood the responsibility, and now he could decide for himself how much he had to work each day. Rail reminded that all such nuances of cooperation were specified in his announcement, and all additional terms can be discussed right now if of course Mao something does not suit. But for the Demon King, it all seemed like a real paradise. Gradually, the Demon King began to understand what is happening in this territory, because these properties are not distinguished by a demon hunter with incredible strength and no other strong people. Everything unusual here is due to the unique atmosphere created for the residents of this estate, so all the talented residents can come together and work with enthusiasm, because even he, the Demon King, is fascinated so much that he does not want to leave this estate. It is indeed a beautiful and rapidly developing estate in which the Lord is willing to do anything for the welfare of his subjects and gets the same treatment from them. Rail watched with interest the Demon King, who was at this moment deciding whether he should change his life and join the joyful population or return to the gloomy Demon Kingdom. Mao was genuinely admired the young lord, and even he, the Demon King, realized that Ryle's achievements deserved respect. Ryle waited a bit, still asked what decision the Demon King chose for himself, and whether he was willing to work together for the good of all the people of this estate. Mao could not get rid of his doubts, even though it was a great idea, because to stand up to the inhabitants of the estate meant to change his whole life. But still, the Demon Lord extended his hand to the young lord. But at the last moment, remembering his many subjects, demons, who revered him as a real king, Mao apologized to the young lord and explained that at the moment he could not join the residents of the estate. After all, he had obligations that he could not give up so easily, and his loyal subordinates were waiting for his return. Ryle was genuinely saddened to hear the refusal for the first time. But in the end, the young lord realized Mao's responsibility, so he did not insist on his offer, but still offered to return at any time if the Demon King changes his mind, because he will always be welcome in this estate. After this conversation, the Demon King decided to return to his home and thanked Ryle for the hospitality and excellent tour of his estate. Ryle saw off the Demon King, sincerely hoped to meet him again. Meanwhile, in the main cathedral in the royal capital continued to search for the missing Holy Virgin. The nuns put all their efforts into the search and no one could rest until she was found. But in the end it was possible to find out the location of the Holy Virgin. The location of the Holy Maiden turned out to be the Alensov estate located south of the royal capital, and everyone already knew that the young lord of those lands sent out a tempting offer with dubious vacancies. The chief bishop was ready to personally find out all the circumstances of what was happening and ordered to prepare for departure immediately, because the Holy Maiden had to be returned by all means. Natty once again brought the sage's groceries home and suggested that he sometimes take care of the problem himself. But Julius only asked if she had seen anything suspicious when she went to get the groceries. She did not understand what he was talking about, but of course Julius knew that the servants of the church were preparing for the journey very quickly, which meant that they had found out the location of the Holy Virgin. The sage asked that Lord Rail be summoned to him for an important conversation. And then he explained to Natty that Arlence's holdings could very soon be in mortal danger, and so they must act without wasting time, for now the Lord would be required to make a choice. Ryle was very surprised to find out who Lou really was and did not want to believe it. But the sage Julius argued that it was indeed true and there could be no mistake. After all, the first time he met this girl he felt her strongest magical power, and so he immediately understood everything. Ryle really remembered the moment when the sage had called all the people gathered together very interesting individuals. The young lord had suspected something was wrong with Lou, but he had no idea what kind of secret she was keeping. Now there's a high-ranking adventurer, a great sage, and a holy maiden in his manor. But the problem, according to Julius, was that right now, the ministers of the church were heading here. Ryle didn't understand how the girl could be forcibly returned to this land of her own free will. But as Julius had explained, the church officials didn't care about the girl's wishes and would do anything for the sake of their goal. Ryle of course realized that the greedy church officials just wanted to use Lou's magical gift. Of course they would try to steal her away in front of everyone. So it was urgent to come up with a solution to this problem. Yuli warned about the possibility of the arrival of a group of knights together with the church officials, because their support will allow to use force to detain the Holy Maiden and bring her home. The young lord promised to protect the girl, because she is a resident of his estate, and to protect his subjects is a duty for any lord. Julius, of course, expected from Ryle just such an answer and therefore offered to listen carefully to an idea. A few days later Natty was quietly doing her work and trying to record all the goods received in the ledger and did not expect any uninvited guests. Natty immediately rushed to report the arrival of the church officials, but Ryle was already ready to meet these people. First, the young lord ordered the evacuation of all the inhabitants to Julius' house. The adventuress Helene was of course to stay with her lord. Julius knew had the responsibility to take care of all the inhabitants of the manor while he and Helene were busy communicating with the church officials. Many times at this crucial moment, the Holy Maiden herself appeared and inquired about the estate. This was something Ryle hadn't expected and didn't yet know how to deal with Lou. But it was obvious that it was better not to report anything about the Holy Maiden, because she would not want to cause trouble for the locals and would want to surrender to the church officials. The young lord made the most joyful appearance and said that they had new guests, and so he and Ellen would go and meet them, while the rest should do their own things or just relax. All the more Lou did not like intrusive people and noisy companies, and so she had better go to Julius, who was looking for her. Natty immediately offered the Holy Maiden her help. After all, she is talking to a wise man. Ellen remained silent and then suggested how angry Lou would be when she learned the whole truth. Ryle was in agreement and apologized to the adventuress for constantly relying on her abilities in difficult situations. But the girl was ready to defend her city even at the cost of her life, and she had said so many times, especially since she only does what she wants to do. Lou is a valuable comrade, and fighting for a comrade is a common thing for a defender and adventurer, and so she should just do her job. Ryle thanked the girl for her loyalty and offered to leave to meet the guests. Once in the sage's house, the Holy Virgin asked Julius what was going on and why everyone was gathered in one place, because this had never happened before, so there was a reason. Julius tried to explain that all people have worked very hard and that's why he allowed everyone to rest a little and do their own things. But the girl refused to believe it. The sage then promised to tell the truth, but on condition that Lou would follow his orders. Then the sage told about the appearance in these lands of churchmen who want to bring her back home, and now Lord Rail together with Ellen went to meet them. So to avoid unnecessary casualties, all the people of the estate were gathered in one place. Lou got very excited, and of course she was about to go to meet the church officials, but Natty grabbed her and advised her not to do something so stupid. Lou didn't want anyone to get hurt because of her and was willing to sacrifice herself. But Julius Sage warned the girl that if she went to the church officials right now, it would end up being something bad for everyone on the estate anyway. All the more Lord Ryle had promised to protect her and he must be trusted. Julius's wisdom was indeed boundless, and he was able to convince the girl to do exactly as he said. Natty was also very worried about her lord and did not know what might happen at the meeting with the church officials. The sage decided to use magic and created 2 birds and then asked the girl to open the window. The magical birds were of course unusual animals and served as observers and scouts. Soon the birds caught up with the young lord and watched what was happening. The commander of the squad of knights saw Ryle and ordered him to get out of his way immediately. I don't know that there is a holy maiden in this estate, and they came here to bring her back to the church. But the young lord refused to obey the knight's orders, and its admiring residents were delighted when they heard the lord's words through the magic bird. The knight's commander advised obedience and warned of dire consequences. Well, just at that moment appeared the high priest, who began to calm the knights and said that the god does not encourage unnecessary battles, and then he decided to talk to the local lord personally. Ryle immediately realized that this high priest was the main one among the arriving guests, which meant that he was the main threat. The priest asserted his right to take back what belonged to the church and advised him to hand over Lou immediately. Then he explained that the Holy Virgin is an important attribute of the religion, and therefore without her they cannot exist, and Lord Rail must return it. And for this he will receive a generous reward. After all, most likely to live in such a wilderness and so far from the royal capital is very difficult, and any money will help to improve the area. The high priest offered the guy an impressive sum to give the girl and forget about today. 50 gold coins was indeed a huge sum, and Ryle pretended to be interested in it, while the people of the manor were shocked by the priest's perfidy. But Julia was advised not to worry because everything was going according to plan. The priest was confident in his success, and Ryle realized that the church is not badly earning on its parishioners and thus profits, and the high priest himself. The high priest was not happy about such accusations and pretended not to understand. It was exactly as Lou had said, and now the high priest confirmed it with his reaction. There were funds allocated for the support and expenses of the population, but they all went into the pockets of the greedy priest. The young lord then asked if the knights and priests were aware of how the high priest was lining his pockets by taking advantage of others and not providing anyone with the necessities of life. The high priest began to refute all these accusations and said that he had patiently saved the money and had not taken it from anyone. This was a fine reply, to which the young lord said that he was not going to take the money and ruin such a fine man as the priest. But of course Ryle realized how deceitful the high priest was, and so he ordered that the money be taken immediately and removed from his estate, for he would never sell out his fellows. The people of the manor were ecstatic at the words of their favorite lord, and now his ranking had reached the maximum. The Holy Maiden blushed with embarrassment, and the priest gritted his teeth with anger. All the goodwill of the priest instantly disappeared, and he ordered the knights to immediately finish off the cocky boy. But the knights began to realize how sneaky and cunning the high priest was and did not hurry to carry out the order. The high priest was furious at this moment and ordered the knights not to hesitate and to carry out the order, because that is their job, and if they refuse, they will be severely punished. The priest promised each knight to learn by example what God's punishment is, and this influenced the determination of the knights, who realized that they had no choice but to follow orders. The people of the manor were frightened at this point, for they were worried for their own that the holy knights were comparable in strength to adventurers of the B rank. But Ryle didn't worry about his life because he had the fearless Ellen by his side. A few precise blows of the blade cooled the offensive impulse of the holy knights that will not call anyone to touch the Lord. All that happened made the inhabitants of the manor delighted, for they were happy to have Ellen living with them. The high priest was shocked by the strength of a girl who could take out several knights. But Julius knew about the long route the knights had taken to get here, and now they were too exhausted to put up a decent resistance to such a strong adventurer as Helen. One of the defeated holy knights, a little recovered from the blow, recognized in his rival great adventuress alias Sword Helen and did not understand why she was here. The high priest had also heard about the girl's achievements and was surprised, but Ellen explained that there was nothing surprising in it, because she liked the vacancy offered by the Lord here, and all his unusual conditions were true. In addition, unlike the high priest, Mr. Ryle really cares about his subordinates and is certainly not going to cheat them and profit from ordinary residents, forcing them to work without weekends. The holy knights were surprised by the adventurer's words and began to discuss the incredible conditions in this estate, which they could not even dream of working for a deceitful priest. Reed was pleased with the way he had managed to sow doubts among the knights, because now the priest could lose his support. Ellen offered the uninvited guests to go back home, and if they didn't accept, they would be introduced to her blade. Ryle decided to take this opportunity and offered the holy knights to become residents of his domain. Soon no one expected, and even Julius did not advise to do so, and Ryle decided on his own. The young lord advised the knights to make the right choice, because the guilty is only the one who gave mean orders, and ordinary people are just pawns in a dirty game. Ryle promised to receive everyone and provide them with everything they needed. Julius was pleased with his lord's wisdom, for the holy knights would be a good fighting force, and it would be a beneficial acquisition for the future security of the estate. And Natty praised Julius for the ingeniously thought-out plan. The high priest was furious at this situation and urged the holy knights not to let themselves be deceived, because the person who is trying to deceive them is deliberately holding back the Holy Maiden and taking advantage of her powerful strength. Ryle rejected all of the high priest's false accusations and said that Lou had come to his manor of her own free will, because she was tired of her miserable existence in the church. The girl had found a new occupation for herself after coming here, because she was able to do things that were forbidden to her before. This freedom of choice gave Lou the ability to smile and enjoy life. So the high priest can get away because there is no saintly maiden that he once knew, and now here lives a simple and free from oppression girl Lou. And she is a resident of Lord Rail's domain and under his protection, so no one can infringe on her freedom and safety. These words made an impression on everyone who heard them, and the people of the manor felt like decent human beings. Lou at that moment felt emotions she had never felt before and was ready to cry from happiness. The Lord's words did not leave indifferent in holy knights, one of whom asked permission to join the locals and promised to faithfully serve Lord Ryle. The other knights followed their commander's example and declared that they had already served the high priest for too long, but now they no longer wanted to do so. The high priest was shocked and reminded of God's punishment that would come upon every traitor, but his threats were quickly stopped by a powerful punch to the face. Ryle mercifully tried to help the priest and asked what he was going to do now. The priest decided to flee and promised to return from the royal capital with reinforcements. But it didn't matter anymore because the young lord had succeeded, and even Helen was delighted with this plan. But Ryle felt tired after the difficult negotiations, and the adventuress called him a persistent man. The knights inquired about their future prospects in case they did decide to stay here, and Ellen advised to speak respectfully to Lord Rail, because he is a generous man and is ready to take care of every inhabitant of his domain. Ryle still asked not to be called a saint and offered to use only his first name to address him, although he does own the territory. The knights were delighted with the Lord's manner of speaking and promised to do as he wishes. The knights continued to discuss the changes in their lives that had happened so quickly, and at this moment, the excited Lou was already rushing towards her fearless savior. The girl looked at the young lord with admiration and did not even know how to express her gratitude. Ryle only advised Lou not to worry because all the problems with the high priest had already been solved. Lou hugged the boy and apologized for the trouble she had caused by her appearance, because she didn't want to involve anyone in her problems. But at the same time, she really wanted to stay here and be useful. The young lord hugged Lou and like a caring father stroked her head and explained that if she wanted to, she could stay here as long as she wanted. Soon the rest of the manor appeared nearby and congratulated their lord for a great achievement and a fine speech that allowed him to expel the priest and leave him without the support of the knights. Everyone thought Ryle was the coolest ruler they had ever seen in their lives, and for the first time in her life the Holy Maiden did not feel uncomfortable being around so many people. The new residents of Lord Rail's estate felt needed and free, and the latest addition of holy knights and priests impressed everyone. Cree and Ben were happy with their new life, for now I could not socialize and smoke cigarettes in my spare time. Cree confessed that for the sake of such a life he was even ready to fight against monsters. But suddenly Ben noticed how something dark was approaching from the territory of demons, and the guys began to realize that it could not be anything good, because the land of demons has always been a deadly threat. Frightened and worried peasants prepared to face another challenge and expected in a few minutes to meet with a terrible demon who decided to invade the territory. Meanwhile, the young lord was busy improving the store and promised to bring everything necessary for normal life, and if anything else was needed then they could ask the guards, and now they had a lot of knights in charge of security. Ryle noticed a noisy gentleman who hoped to be served faster than the other customers and talked about his exclusivity, but he was insistently asked to keep order and take his place in line. Ryle watched with interest and wondered what the relationship between Lou and the former church members would be like. But at the moment everything was fine and Lou didn't seem so withdrawn anymore. Since the number of people in the manor had increased considerably, it was worth thinking about additional profits. And it would also be good to establish special rules of behavior so that people would not quarrel over silly situations. But even despite his successes, the young lord still expected possible small troubles and even assumed that some part of the territory might be in crisis. That was why he, as the ruler of these domains, should properly organize such relationships between the inhabitants. But all this only caused excitement. The commander of the knights distracted the lord and asked for permission to ask him a question. Natty and Lou were doing the chores of filling out countless paperwork and saw how happy the young knight commander's face was when Ryle allowed him to leave the estate to visit his family. Lou continued to be embarrassed and remembered this incident when she had allowed herself to hug the young lord, and now it made her feel ashamed. Natty noticed how much the girl's face flushed, but Lou tried to immediately distract herself from her thoughts. But persistent Natty continued to ask about the emotions of the Holy Virgin, because her red face could only say that she was in love with someone very much. These words of course interested everyone present and aroused a great deal of emotion. The former clergymen were shocked by such a change in the character of the Holy Virgin and asked her to tell them the details of who she was in love with. But the girl refused and called it all nonsense. Rail was enjoying this hilarious atmosphere and laughed along with everyone else. Just at that moment, an excited Ben entered the store and announced the arrival of a new person. Ryle was interested and wanted to see another potential resident of his estate as soon as possible. But when the lord saw the Demon King it caused him to react violently, for Mao looked different this time and brought a huge barrel with him. The Demon King announced his return. Rail inquired about the Demon King's motives and asked him to explain why he had come so suddenly. But Mao explained that he would not stay long and hurriedly put the heavy barrel on the floor, and then began to communicate. The Demon King with a satisfied look showed his barrel and offered to taste this wonderful drink. Ryle thanked Mao for the visit and decided to introduce him to someone. But at that moment the former Holy Knights intervened in the situation, who of course saw the Demon King as a mortal threat and rushed to protect their lord. Ryle tried to calm the knights, but no one was going to lower their weapons. The knights advised them to take a close look at this horrible guest because he was a real Demon King. But the young lord refused to believe and didn't think Mao was a dangerous person. But even Lou began to talk about the very sinister magical power emanating from this man, and the possibility that he was a demon. Ryle was genuinely surprised and thought it was a terrible mistake. He had been in contact with Mao for a long time and couldn't even imagine him as a terrible Demon King, especially now that he had come for a friendly visit. But Mao was not going to hide his real identity and said that he had told him that he was a Demon King the first time they met. But Lord didn't believe him then. Only now Ryle realized who he was dealing with, but still he didn't remember such a confession from Mao. But then the young lord began to remember his first meeting with the Demon King and remembered how he thought his words about his origins were a joke and probably looked like a young fool at that moment. Meanwhile, the knights cautiously approached the Demon King and ordered him to get away, otherwise he would be destroyed. But the Demon King reminded them that he had come here at Rail's invitation and had never deceived him. After calming down a bit, the young lord asked the knights not to be hostile to Mao. Ryle admitted that he was very surprised that he had been in contact with the real Demon King all this time, but it was not important now. Ryle tried to explain that he did not care what Mao was doing or what race he belonged to, and all his subordinates should take Mao as calmly as he did. But the commander of the knights did not understand, because his responsibility was to protect this territory from demons, which means that the Demon King himself is the main enemy and a threat to all the locals. Ryle of course realized that the knight was right and decided to find some reasonable solution to this problem. Ryle suggested that the knights fight the Demon King if they dislike him so much, but they should realize that Mao will be able to destroy them in a matter of minutes. At this point, the situation was hurriedly intervened by the Holy Maiden, who realized how important Mao was to Ryle. The girl apologized to the Demon King for showing disrespect and asked him to forgive her for insulting the guest in some way. These words made Mao surprised and continued to stare at the strange girl. Lou once again blushed very red with embarrassment and welcomed the Demon King to Arlent's territory, and then offered her help as chief accountant if Mao had any questions. Ryle was surprised by the girl's behavior and noticed how her words made the Demon King happy despite Mao not liking to talk to people. The Demon King actually started smiling and thanked Lou for the introduction. After that, the friendly girl suggested that everyone go back to work, know each other, and there would be no problems. Ryle was delighted with what Lou was able to defuse the situation and solve this difficult problem. The knights had calmed down and no longer showed hostility, and the Demon King was now happy to socialize with humans. Ryle asked Mao if he was okay, because he already knew about his encounter with the humans when he got here. Mao thought about everything that had happened. Before leaving his domain, the Demon King gave a speech to his subordinates and told them how he had personally penetrated the territory of Arlents and learned the most important secret. Mao talked about the incredible working environment, which was based on excellent support and mechanisms and created an atmosphere where the workers were the main value for the Lord, and it brought excellent results. That's why he wanted to introduce these technologies in his territory, which means that all demons must realize that good motivation for each subordinate is the main reason for their performance. But all the subordinates of the King of Demons did not support the aspiration of their master, because in fact they did not want to work, and it was easier for them to leave all the problems to their lord. Mao was shocked by this attitude and insolence of subordinates. Without getting support from his subordinates, the King of Demons in despair sent them a letter in which he reported his departure, because he no longer wanted to be in a place where he is not understood. Mao suggested that Ryle distract himself and go horseback riding, practicing his riding skills. Ryle was glad of the message with the Demon King but felt the real problem would come later. The young lord then decided to show the Demon King the bar they had talked about earlier, and Mao expressed his desire to try working there as a manager. Mao noticed the frightened peasants offered them to come to the bar and thanked them for helping him get to the estate. Though judging by the boys' emotions, they were still afraid of the Demon King. Ben refused and said that there was still work to be done, and Kree decided to accept the Demon King's offer of a drink, because it was foolish to refuse. Mao offered to come anytime convenient and promised all the best. Ryle and Lou also decided to accept the Demon King's offer and visit the bar. The young lord advised the knights to also join after work and relax a bit. But the former church attendants continued to see the Demon King as a danger and didn't want to leave the lord alone with him. Lou tried to calm the knight down and called Mao a friend of Ryle's. The Demon King took his huge barrel, advised everyone to come together so no one would worry. Ryle of course realized that it would be very difficult for everyone to accept the Demon King as the new resident of his estate, but he hoped that after some time would pass, that he decided to stay and finish her work and visit the bar afterwards. As a result, the whole noisy group of people went to the bar with the Demon King. Mao was looking forward to the moment when he could see his new place of work, and Lou just enjoyed the communication, which before she avoided, and only the knight continued to be aggressive. Soon they did manage to reach the abandoned bar, and for the first time in a long time the young lord opened the doors. Ryle immediately smelled the smell of dust and old age, for no one had done anything in this place for many years. The young lord explained that he hadn't used this room until now and of course it needed a thorough cleaning, and then asked the Demon King for his opinion. Mao looked around the room with interest and realized how much work he had to do. Ryle advised the Demon King not to worry and promised that everything would be fine, and that in order to restore the place it would only need a little cleaning, and of course he and the others would help in this endeavor. Mao admitted that he hoped to rest in this place, and Ryle sincerely did not understand how the Demon King could handle his duties for so long with such a lack of organization. Ben and Kree decided to help the Demon King and explained that together they could deal with the problem much faster, and although it was not very pleasant to work after their main job, but for the sake of the common cause they were willing to do it. The indignant knight said that he wasn't going to work for the Demon King because it was against his principles, but Lou didn't understand why the knight continued to be so angry. Then everyone noticed the strange behavior of the Demon King, and the knight explained that this is exactly the manifestation of demonic anger, but they will not give in to pathetic threats and are ready to protect people. But in fact at this moment the Demon King was crying, then explained that this whole situation has cheered him up so much that he can no longer contain his emotions and even cried. Rael was delighted with the reaction of the King of Demons and urged everyone to immediately start cleaning, because the strength of everyone will be useful in this responsible and important work. Meanwhile, Natty continued to work hard alone and counted on the fact that the bar is not opened in vain, because she brought a lot of needed food, which will be enough for the fun of all the inhabitants of the estate. The girl was sure that everyone would praise her when she arrived with the huge barrels of sake at the bar. The desire to be useful and become the center of attention gave Natty the motivation to move faster, but the wagon proved too heavy to move quickly. Just then, Ellen was returning from the forest with the other hunters and asked what exactly Natty was doing. The merchant explained that she was trying to get to a great place as fast as possible. The hunters were of course interested in finding out the details, and when they learned that a bar had opened during their absence, they of course decided to help get the heavy wagon to its destination. Meanwhile, the bar cleanup was in its final stages. The old dusty and cobweb-filled bar was transformed into a perfectly clean establishment thanks to the combined efforts. Even the disgruntled knight had helped in this difficult endeavor, and now the Demon King felt like he was in the right place. The knight continued to resent him, but the Demon King no longer paid any attention to it, because everyone was following his orders anyway, and now it was time to celebrate the opening of the bar. The former holy knights were not going to relax and still considered the Demon King dangerous. Just at that moment, the cheerful Natty reached the bar with her wagon. The girl happily announced that she had been able to deliver alcoholic drinks, and Ellen was so happy to be in this place that she couldn't understand why they hadn't told her about the opening of the bar earlier. But Rael had called it all a surprise, though he hadn't really expected to do it all so quickly. Ellen was eager to get the party started and ordered the barrels of alcohol to be moved as soon as possible. Rael hadn't expected to see such a love for alcohol from the girl, and realized that everyone was going to have to get very drunk tonight. Natty was still waiting to be praised for delivering such a huge amount of food and alcohol, but she was still unsure of the amount of sake needed. But the Demon King said that there is no such thing as too much sake, so he was grateful for Natty's help. Now stroked the girl's head in a friendly manner and called her a true employee of the month, suggested that everyone relax and have a drink together. But as soon as Ellen realized exactly who the owner of the bar was, it gave her a shock. The Demon King also realized who he was dealing with, because he had heard about the courage of the adventurous Ellen. Rael tried to quickly defuse the situation and introduced Mao as the new master and bar manager, and Ellen was the main monster hunter in his estate. Reed hoped that Ellen and Mao would find common ground, but the adventuress certainly realized who was in front of her, and it wasn't even human. Then there was a suggestion not to waste time and drink to new friends and to the opening of the bar. The first to get very drunk were the former holy knights, and they were happy to relax in this way, considering it as a reward for their labors. The guys told their feelings to the Demon King, and it amused Mao. The Demon King talked about how he works hard, and when he finishes things, he is happy and sad at the same time, and he understands people's feelings very well. The knights let Mao for his responsiveness and understanding. The Demon King was full of hope and promised to work in this bar in a completely different way, because he became the manager here and can start everything in a new way and make everything better. Ellen was surprised by Mao's words, and the Demon King called all the people present worthy, because they all got the opportunity to work in this wonderful place. Relaxed by the strong alcohol, the former holy knights completely forgot about their hostility and decided to work hard here from now on. The guys rejoiced and no longer thought Mao was a monster. Rael enjoyed how his subordinates glorified his domain and still managed to find common ground with the Demon King. After all, if they constantly quarreled, it couldn't last long like this. The young lord was sincerely grateful to all the people working for him and promised himself to do everything so that his employees became true friends and could rely on each other in any difficult situation. Rael initially thought that as a lord he needed to do something about it and intervene in any controversial situation. But as he realized now, it was not worth worrying too much, and sometimes the problem solved itself. Ellen after a while wondered how quickly the former knights got drunk, because she still felt normal, even though it was already the last stage of the party with alcohol. The Demon King called the adventuress a worthy opponent in the use of strong alcohol, and perhaps she is in this case the best among the people here. But Mao considered himself invincible in this matter. Ellen considered the Demon King's words as a challenge and called him just a novice, as she is a real knight and can drink without stopping. Mao was ready to have a drinking competition. The bar manager announced the start of an election for the best drinking man in the area, and Lord Rail was to be the judge of this competition. Ryle was delighted with the idea, for it was all great fun. Such joint entertainment was to bring the people of the estate closer together, and now no one remembered the hostility and any problems, as everyone was busy drinking. The noisy and friendly atmosphere erased all boundaries between the social statuses and races of the residents of the Alenza territory. Everyone forgot who they were before they came here. The leaders of the drinking competition were of course the Demon King and Ellen. While all the other participants were already sound asleep and of course could not continue drinking, these two were still on their feet and continued their confrontation. But no matter how hard Ellen and Mao tried, neither of them was losing in this competition, and in the end the two strongest competitors informed the Lord about the draw between them. But as it turned out, Ryle had long been fast asleep and had not been following the competition at all. Ellen and Mao wished their lord good dreams and decided to drink a few more mugs to his health. A few days later, the high priest returned to the royal capital and was furious to be in his cathedral. He sincerely regretted not being able to overturn the Holy Maiden and not fulfilling his destiny. The high priest constantly recalled the horrible people he was with and how easily the young lord had accused him of terrible things and managed to win the holy knights over to his side. Now the priest noticed his servants and demanded to speak of the purpose of their visit. As it turned out, very important information had come in from the territory of Alenza. The high priest was of course interested and listened attentively as one of the nuns whispered to him about how all the inhabitants had rushed out and got drunk in the local bar. This great news gave hope to the high priest, and he immediately wanted to organize a meeting with the king himself. The nuns considered it their legal right to be in the territory of Alenza and to have rights to control the fates of others. Meanwhile, the former Holy Maiden Lou, to the surprise of everyone, decided to take up a new business and develop her culinary talents, where she really enjoyed cooking for her friends and experiencing new flavors. Demon King Mao was grateful to the girl for her support and help, and a hungry Rail suggested to start eating as soon as possible. Although Mao thought the dining chair was the best place to discuss business, what was really surprising was that today's food on the table was personally prepared by young Lou, and you girl was very worried, hoping that her food would be liked when the demon people. Mao, after thanking for the food, decided to immediately detach the dishes. Ryle asked during lunch how the priests behaved when working in the bar, and as it turned out, the Demon King was pleased with their work. Mao also talked about his attempts to cook food, and many liked his appetizers with beer, and the atmosphere in the collective was top-notch. Rail was very pleased with the result of his efforts because some of the priests and knights decided to work in Mao's bar. The rest were no longer hostile to the Demon King. But of course all the inhabitants of the estate with pleasure visited the entertainment establishment. The Demon King was very pleased with the taste of the food prepared by Lou. Rail was happy for the girl because she tried hard when cooking, but suddenly Mao dropped the spoon from his hand. The Demon King suddenly felt bad and frightened his friends. Mao even lost consciousness for a few minutes, but when he woke up he assumed it was the soup. Lou was shocked and couldn't believe it, because it shouldn't be like that, and then she remembered adding some healing herbs to the soup to help relieve the fatigue. The Demon King also didn't understand the reason for his condition, because usually all herbs were harmless to him. Ryle didn't understand anything about cooking, and Lou was so upset that she apologized and blamed herself. But Mao, still thinking about his condition, asked her not to worry, because he was sure that it was not the ingredients in the soup, but something else. Mao decided that someone secretly slipped him something harmful soup, and he will definitely find this person. But he will not kill him, but just a thorough conversation. Lou promised not to worry, though her hands continued to shake with excitement. At that moment, the staff wanted to enter the room and couldn't understand what was going on here. Meanwhile, the young lord tried to calm the Demon King, but he was very bad at it. No one could believe that the cooked soup could be the reason for the Demon King's bad condition, and everyone decided to make Mao eat at least a little more to confirm this theory and not to blame Lou. Natty demanded to stop bullying the Demon King immediately, and not to force him to eat if he didn't want to. In the end, everyone decided that it would be best for Mao to rest now and helped him to his room. It was the first time Ryle had eaten in such a noisy environment, but in any case it was even a little weight, and the way the Demon King suffered from poisoning sometimes even caused laughter, although it is certainly wrong. Lou decided that next time the Demon King would have to cook something delicious by himself. Rail suggested that the girl not to worry and continue to eat lunch because after that they would have work to do. Lou was thoroughly engaged in her work as an accountant, and thanks to that Ryle began to realize how high expenses would be needed to provide for the growing population. It was imperative that they figure out a way to increase their income as quickly as possible, given that this year's harvest would be small. The young lord then turned his attention to the increased expenses of Rag's blacksmith. While the care of weapons and farming tools was certainly important, it was necessary to fund the blacksmith's work. But first, Rail decided to visit the forge. The journey to the forge took a short time, and Rail was greeted by the head blacksmith, Ragdo. The young blacksmith was busy at work as usual and was surprised to see the lord, and Ryle apologized for distracting him from his work. Ryle explained that he had come to consult on an important tool, and Ragdo, considering himself an expert, promised to help and show him the new product he had created in his spare time. The young lord was surprised to see a sword of unusual shape and did not understand how it differed in function from ordinary weapons, but it was still very interesting to learn the details from the blacksmith. But as it turned out, this sword even had a magical aura. Ryle tried to control it, but he was scared. Lou advised him not to worry because it wasn't black magic and so it shouldn't do any harm. Ragdo was pleased with himself because he was able to attract the lord's attention with his skill, but he still needed new equipment to become a perfect master. Ragdo was indeed a good master and had trained his body for his profession. Ryle was impressed by the skill of the blacksmith, who could make an incredible sword from the claws of the Wolf King, and decided to consult with his sage about the use of such a weapon and the development of production. After all, it was Julius who gave this sword magic. All this information impressed the young lord, because he did not even suspect about such strong magical abilities of his advisor, and therefore it was necessary to talk to him as soon as possible. The sage Julius was of course at home, lying in bed and glad to have visitors, who had not visited much lately. Ryle asked him to tell him about the magical weapon that the blacksmith Ragdo was making. Julius called it a magic weapon and explained its creation by saying that he just wanted to make it and that it might help in the future to increase the income and cover the increasing expenses. After all, now that the number of people was increasing and expenses had risen considerably, a new source of profit had to be found. Yuli asked the lord that he himself didn't want to do it for his holdings, but Ryle thought that making magic weapons could be an unsafe endeavor. But the sage reminded how difficult it was to increase income, and so at the moment there was no other choice but to make magic weapons, especially while there were no other sources of income. Julius said that in the past he had used the corpses of high-ranked monsters to create more valuable magic weapons. And while in the past Ryle had just sold monsters, now it was possible to develop this field by selling weapons. It was an admirable plan, and nothing but genius was to be expected from a sage. But still, Julius recognized that there is a limit to the use of magical powers and need to take into account the quality of materials obtained from monsters, and unfortunately at this stage it is difficult to create a lot of weapons. But not looking at some problems and misunderstandings, young lord was satisfied with the result and thanked Julius for the increased income. The sage stated that it was all in his interest, as he didn't want to lose such a good place to work. Julius told about how he used to want to get into the production of magical weapons, and for that he consulted with the blacksmith to make the right sample. After all, he was sure that when the young lord would see this magical weapon, he would be surprised and would definitely accept a favorable offer. But despite the fact that there was still no finished sample of the magic weapon, one must continue to strive for development. Ryle asked for more details about it. Julia wants to create more than 2,000 copies of magic weapons. Ryle was fascinated by his advisor's global plans and was especially impressed when Julius talked about plans to create a holy blade that would become a source of profit in the future. Ryle couldn't believe that it was possible to create a holy sword so easily, but Julius of course reminded him of some conditions that had to be met. Even so, Ryle thought about the future development of his domain, because the creation of such a powerful weapon would be useful. Lou was distrustful of holy weapons and did not immediately believe in Julius' abilities, but the sage explained that the holy sword was not magic, but spirit. Ryle did not understand anything about magic and so only asked for clarification about the timing of production. The young lord promised to provide all the necessary materials, but Julius regretfully admitted that right now he could not create a holy sword and that another wizard was doing it and he was a brave man, so they needed a brave man. Ryle didn't know anything about it, but he assumed that in order to make the holy sword they now needed to get the power of a brave. Ryle asked Lou if she knew anyone suitable for the role. But Ryle realized that even if a brave were to enter his territory, there was no guarantee that such a person would choose to join his population, so it was a very difficult task. The sage asked his lord if he knew what the mission of a true hero was. It was a difficult question, and Ryle, after a bit of thought, suggested that it was important for a hero to make the world safe and stop wars. And he, as a true lord, was obliged to defend his territory and fight the terrible monsters ruled by the Demon King. But this was foolish, and Ryle realized it, because the Demon King became his employee. But the sage had of course heard about Mao and was told everything by Natty, which meant he quickly came up with another plan. Julius told how he instructed Natty to spread the rumors about the Demon King in the royal capital among some people as soon as possible. Natty was a very sociable girl and was able to do a great job and spread the rumors, and soon the high priest learned that the Demon King lives in the territory of Arlentz. Lou was not thrilled with this plan and realized that now the Arlentz territory could become a battleground between the brave hero and the Demon King, and it was too dangerous. But Ryle trusted the sage and decided that everything would be fine, even though Lou didn't understand anything. The young lord was sure that when the brave hero met with Mao, he immediately decided not to fight him, because the King of Demons is not at all what he imagined. After all, Mao even tried to eat a soup harmful to him just to avoid upsetting Lou. The girl immediately realized that on this territory really do not work the usual rules, and here can live representatives of different times in a peaceful environment. Lou wanted to see the hero change his mind as soon as possible. Lou decided that the moment when the Demon King and the hero who should fight would shake hands in friendship would be the most memorable moment in her life. The girl wanted to witness this incredible event together with the young lord. Natty also wanted to see it, and Julius decided that this event would change the whole history, and after many years, they will continue to remember this moment. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, the high priest tried as much as possible to inform the king about the terrible crimes in the Arlentz domain, because the Demon King lives there and may be preparing another invasion. But the guard was not in a hurry to let the priest into the main hall of the king, because it was necessary to make an appointment. The priest was shocked because he had important information and wanted to take revenge on the young lord. But at that moment there was a man who heard the conversation of the head priest and was interested in the information about the demon lord and then asked to tell the details. It was a girl hero who had dedicated her life to fighting monsters and demonic creatures, so now she wanted to know everything the priest knew about the Demon King. Even the guard was surprised by the sudden appearance of the heroes, and the cunning high priest found in it a divine blessing and his chance to take revenge on the insolent young lord. The priest still managed to get an appointment with the king, and his information got the supreme ruler thinking. He was surprised when he learned of the location of the Demon King. After all, right next to the territory of the young lord was the territory of the demons, which means that the demon lord could somehow capture the neighboring lands. But the king was surprised by the still strange jobs and working conditions, which were nowhere else. The hero girl proposed to immediately go on a reconnaissance mission and find out the plans of the Demon King. The king supported this idea and suggested that the hero do his best for this purpose. The king in the end ordered the hero Hannah to immediately go to the territory of Arlentz and find out all the circumstances of the Demon King living there, as well as assess the threat to the kingdom. Most of all at this moment rejoiced High Priest, who counted on the strength of the hero and was sure that now the young lord will regret his actions. The king suggested Hannah to ask for help to the minister, who would provide her with everything she needed to fulfill the mission, and the girl decided that she should not let her king down. The journey alone was not as easy as expected, for the territory of Arlentz was very far from the royal capital, and now Hannah felt very tired and doomed. Hannah was in such a hurry to fulfill the king's order that she hadn't eaten anything for days and her stomach began to ache. Hannah decided to rest for a while and even tasted an ordinary leaf from a tree, but it was terribly bitter. The girl was disappointed and remembered how the minister had only given her 1 silver coin and a small bag of healing herbs. It was too little for such a long journey, but the minister could do nothing to help her. The minister advised the girl not to be upset and to remember that she was a fearless hero who could overcome any difficulties, and that is why the state allocates little money for the maintenance of heroes. Hannah was a brave but naive girl and thanked the minister for the money and did not even realize how she had been cheated. The greedy official only wished her good luck and warned her that if she did not fulfill her mission, her salary would be reduced. Hannah was beginning to realize how difficult the job of a hero is, because she can't even afford to buy herself a decent meal, and from this she suffers a lot. But she couldn't give up her job. After all, many people hoped for her protection. Gathering the last forces, the girl hero decided not to be discouraged. She had to justify the expectations of his king and as soon as possible to get to the lands of Arlance and do everything possible to fulfill the mission. Soon the girl was able to get to the destination point and wanted to find the Demon King as soon as possible, because his existence threatened the whole world and she as a hero must protect innocent people and her king. Hannah decided to immediately find the Demon King and immediately defeat him with the help of her fortitude and blade, because that was the purpose of a real hero in this world. But despite her great desire to fight the Demon King, the girl realized that her sword was of poor quality, and she could simply not fulfill her goal. But still she hoped to compensate for it with her courage. But suddenly Hannah was met by a local girl who was surprised to see a stranger. But Hannah herself didn't expect to see a child where the dreaded Demon King lives. Hannah greeted the girl and explained that she had come here to do her job, and the girl introduced herself as Annie. The girl hero didn't understand why the child looked so happy if everyone here was enslaved by the Demon Lord. Hannah suddenly imagined that the report was wrong and in fact there was no Demon King here, and so she wouldn't need to risk her life doing a difficult task. Even so, she had to find the local lord as soon as possible and find out the details of the jobs he offered. Hannah asked the girl to take her to the lord and Annie immediately told her that at this time everyone usually had to dine at the Demon King Mao's house and it was better to go there. These words of the child shattered Hannah's expectations and now she was scared and realized that there was no mistake and these lands were really under the control of the Demon King. Hannah decided that the girl is under the influence of the Demon King and she is forced to smile, although in reality the girl is suffering. But the magic of the demons is so strong that the child can't do anything. Hannah promised the girl to bring back her real smile and make the Demon King regret his crimes. But Annie didn't understand what the girl hero was talking about and offered to follow her to where Lord Rail could be found. Following the child, Hannah did not forget about vigilance because she expected an attack of demons at any moment. Just at that moment they passed the forge and Hannah was surprised to see an ordinary man at work. Annie immediately told Ragudo about her new friend who had gotten lost and now they were going to Mao. The blacksmith looked at Hannah with interest and noticed her excitement and embarrassment. Ragudo greeted Hannah and the hero girl decided that this affable guy can't be a terrible Demon King. Of course the blacksmith started talking again about his hard work that made him such a strong man. But Hannah didn't believe it and decided that this ordinary man was forced to work hard and of course he is completely enslaved by the Demon Lord and can't escape. And his huge muscles are just proof of working under inhuman conditions. Hannah promised to do everything she could to help the blacksmith free himself from slavery, and then his body would be normal. But this only surprised Ragudo, who realized that the stranger was too strange, and Annie pointed ahead and said that they were almost at the right place. Moving through the city streets, Hannah was surprised to see monsters that were freely around people and this simply couldn't be. Especially the girl talked to the monsters as if they were her friends. Hannah was horrified by the power of the Demon Lord because monsters always oppressed people and wanted to enslave them. So this land had become a place where monsters ruled and controlled people. Hannah looked carefully at everything going on in the city and noticed the people who work hard and try to do everything right, which means they are afraid of punishment. Hannah wanted to act immediately and save the oppressed people. Soon little Annie led Hannah to the place where Mao lived and offered to go to the bar. But the girl hero was not ready for the battle and asked the girl not to hurry. The little Annie was certainly not afraid of anything and opened the doors of the bar and suggested that Hannah should not be shy and go into this beautiful establishment. Inside as usual everyone was laughing and socializing and the Demon King was standing behind the bar. Hannah was shocked to see people just relaxing and chatting at the tables. They all looked happy and were enjoying the cold beer and delicious food. Annie greeted everyone there and asked what smelled so good. Ryle was surprised to see a strange girl at the bar that he had never seen before and wanted to know her name. Ryle stated that he was a lord of these lands and gave his name, then asked Hannah what brought her to Arlance territory. The hero girl didn't know how to answer her and admitted that she had come here to do a job, and then the rumbling of her hungry stomach was heard. Hannah started to apologize, but Rail suggested that they have lunch first and then discuss important business. But a blushing Hannah began to refuse the food. Rail advised not to worry, especially Mao had already prepared something tasty and soon Hannah would be able to satisfy her hunger. Hannah was really hungry, but as a hero she tried to hold back, but when she saw the plate of food her stomach started to give out again. Mao advised her not to waste time and to enjoy the fresh hot soup that she was sure to enjoy. But Hannah tried to restrain her desires and then everyone else began to persuade the hungry girl not to hesitate and eat, because she needed to regain her strength. After a few minutes, the hero girl gave in and decided to try the dish prepared by the Demon King. The taste was incredible and Hannah could no longer restrain her desires. Hannah, still very embarrassed, ate the flavorful soup, worried that she had money to pay for the meal. But everyone just wanted to help the hungry girl and looked at her like a normal child. Hannah finished the soup very quickly, and it was not surprising because she had been starving for several days. But now she felt much better. Then the girl introduced herself and told how she had been eating only grass and leaves for the last few days and had come here to do a job. Hannah began to talk about her important mission that she has to fulfill for the welfare of many people, and when she does she will get a lot of money and pay back her food debt. Ryle looked at Hannah in surprise and didn't understand anything, deciding that she was just a little out of her mind. The young lord didn't understand what kind of work this hungry girl had to do, but the fact that she had to starve was wrong and she should realize it. Ryle couldn't imagine how it was possible for a person to work and not even be able to provide food to do the work. I mean, that's really oppressing your employee. And it doesn't matter how responsible the job is, because it should be paid properly. Helene understood Hannah, because in the past she too had been forced to fulfill the stupid rules of a greedy guild. Helen told her that she used to think all those rules were normal and didn't know, but then she quit her job and found a better job in this place where she can hunt monsters on better terms. Hannah was surprised when she heard Ellen's story and didn't understand how she could quit such an important position in the Adventurer Guild. But Ellen called all the rule and ranks foolishness, for she regretted nothing. Especially in this beautiful place you can fully show your strength and get a decent salary for it. Lou confirmed Helen's words and told how she too had gotten rid of her past life and was now doing interesting work. Ryle explained that many people who came here to live had a hard time in the past and that Hannah could also stay here and not experience the terrible conditions in which she had to work. The young lord talked about his desire to make this place perfect for all its inhabitants so that everyone could enjoy work and leisure. Hannah was confused, for she had expected to see something completely different. Hannah realized that as soon as she came to this place she felt a great friendly atmosphere, and if the Demon King really ruled here, she couldn't understand how it was possible. Hannah regretted for the first time in her life that she had chosen the path of a brave hero, because she also wanted to live like all these happy people who could just enjoy their favorite work under good conditions. But still Hannah understood that she had the great responsibility of a hero, who is obliged throughout his life to fulfill his true purpose, which means that she will not be able to change anything. The young lord understood how much the girl was worried and apologized if something was bothering her. But Hannah was already feeling much better and decided to continue doing her main job. This interested the lord and Ryle asked what kind of errand Hannah had to do on his territory and if she could tell him, she could be helped to do it faster. Ryle advised her not to worry and suggested a mutually beneficial cooperation, because it was much better to overcome problems together. These words made Hannah think, because before she could only rely on her own strength. In the end Hannah told about how she had to find out the location of the Demon King, because there was unconfirmed information that he lived here. Mao immediately reacted and introduced himself as the Demon King, which made the girl stunned. Stunned girl hero only now paid attention to the guy who fed her delicious food and realized who he was. Hannah didn't understand how to proceed. Brave hero Hannah was sure that she would meet the terrible Demon King on the territory of Arlens because she had to fulfill the king's order and protect people, and in the end the girl overcame a huge journey without food and money. And now came the most exciting moment when Hannah could meet her main opponent, which means she must fight hard and fulfill her responsible job. But in the end it turned out that the Demon King was not the horrible creature she had been told about, and the whole atmosphere in Arlens was friendly and kind. Hannah began to realize that perhaps she had been deceived all along. But still Hannah thought the Demon King was a dangerous creature, and maybe he was just using powerful magic and had gotten hold of people's minds. The girl hero asked Mao why he was doing this to people. The Demon King sincerely didn't understand what the girl was trying to accuse him of, but Hannah called him the creature that terrorizes and kills innocent people in this world. Mao called all these accusations silly, because he is not terrorizing or threatening anyone. Hannah continued to be indignant and advised not to deny the obvious facts, because demons are evil. Rail hurried to explain that of course she was right and Mao was indeed the king of demons, but he didn't kill anyone and didn't make anyone suffer. Now Mao is just working in this bar and trying to be helpful. The Demon King showed a beautiful smile and said that good food and fresh beer was her job. But Hannah refused to believe it and called it all a clever deception. Ellen was shocked at the girl's persistence and incredulity, and Ryle asked her to trust them. But the girl hero continued to believe that she was being tricked, because the cunning Demon King is only trying to appear kind to achieve his devious goals, but he is also dangerous. Hannah grabbed her blade and promised that she would not become a toy in the hands of the Demon King, and when she destroyed him, world peace would prevail. Rael asked Ellen to step in and end the misunderstanding. Lou, meanwhile, asked Hannah to stop. But as it turned out, the Demon King was not going to fight anyone at that moment and just went about his business, and that surprised Hannah. Then Maui decided to find out a little differently. The Demon King offered to play an exciting game during which they could solve all the problems. Hannah did not relax for a second and continued to hold her sword in her hands. Mao suggested to calm down a bit and just a bet, and in the end the loser will listen to the winner. The girl hero agreed because she had been planning to destroy the Demon King for a long time. But Mao kept calm and suggested that the girl attack him. It was a great chance for Hannah to fulfill her destiny and save all the oppressed people, because it was her job as a hero. Hannah also decided to use the power of the great elemental of light to win this confrontation. Magical energy began to surround the young hero girl, and it surprised the Demon King, for he had not expected such abilities from the hungry Hannah. Rael looked at Hannah with interest and began to worry about the future. The young lord remembered the words of the sage who spoke of the spirit magic needed to create the holy sword, which meant that Hannah was the brave hero needed for that as well. But Hannah had already rushed to attack the Demon King at that moment. The girl was willing to sacrifice her own life for the well-being of the rest of the people, but the Demon King meanwhile stood absolutely unperturbed, and Rael was trying to stop the hero girl. But in the end, Mao very easily stopped the girl's blade with just a beer mug and didn't even feel the hero's incredible strength. This surprised Hannah so much that she didn't know how to proceed. Rael was admiring the strength of the Demon King, and Mao looked at Hannah carefully and appreciated her mighty strength, but reminded that now the girl was very tired and could never defeat him. But of course, if she was in great shape, he wouldn't be able to stop her with an ordinary mug. The Demon King explained that he could also control the spirit forces, but only dark ones, so now it was best for Hannah to admit defeat, because it was useless to fight in this situation. The girl was shocked at how easily the Demon King had destroyed her blade, and now she was unarmed. Mao still stood and calmly asked if she wanted to continue fighting under such conditions, but Hannah realized her defeat. This caused the hero girl to become hysterical, who was shocked at her failure and began to talk about how long she had marched and now ignominiously lost by not following the king's orders. Hannah started complaining about the greedy minister who didn't give her the right amount of money for a comfortable journey, and so she was too tired during the journey, couldn't buy herself only a bad blade. The Demon King tried to calm the girl down, but this caused even more emotions in Hannah, because she didn't expect her opponent to start helping her. This situation made the Demon King worried, because it appeared that he was the cause of the girl's distress and now he did not know what to do. Rael tried to calm Hannah down and suggested that she sit on a chair and stop crying. Little Annie started to help calm Hannah down, and eventually she succeeded. The girl hero began to realize what a difficult situation she was in. Now she will not be able to complete her main task and save people from the Demon King. But still, the girl apologized for her behavior. Hannah began to realize that everything she had done before had caused her only suffering, and now all these emotions came out. But thanks to the kindness of the people around her and little Annie, she began to feel much better. Rael was pleased and decided to ask if Hannah was really a brave hero. The girl immediately told him about her main assignment from the king, because she had come here for the sole purpose of killing a terrible enemy of mankind. This only surprised Rayla, and the young lord told about how Mao lives quietly in this place and perfectly manages the bar, giving pleasure to people. Mao has been able to find common ground and is no threat to anyone, and now he's just upset that he made Hannah cry. So Hannah must realize that even if she destroys the Demon King, the world will not be a better place, even though Mao does have a threatening aura. Especially Hannah must realize that there are other terrible creatures in this world besides the Demon King, and Mao is a good worker and has not harmed or shown hostility to anyone yet. Then the young lord tried to explain to the girl that she is doing a terrible job that no one appreciates and does not want to pay decently. She risks her own life for the peace of the world, but no one sees it and she is only being exploited. In fact, Hannah is only being taken advantage of by instilling in her a sense of purpose in the world. After all, she truly believes that she should do her job as a hero and do it for free without personal gain. But now she has a chance to change her life and realize what she did wrong in the past. And all she has to do is to stay here and work together with everyone else and feel like a person who is appreciated and well paid. Rael suggested that Hannah think about it, because he could give her a great job where she wouldn't be overworked and would have a legitimate day off. She would also be provided for. Annie advised Hannah to trust Rael, because he takes care of all his people. Hannah talked about how she was paid only 1 silver coin a month and could only use the worst blades. This shocked the young lord and Ellen, for if they treated their staff like that, they would have starved to death or died fighting monsters long ago. Young lord explained that but in this place really care about their employees and he is personally willing to pay everyone a good salary for their work. After all, only so everyone can feel needed and work well. Then Rael asked if Hannah wanted to kill the Demon King now, because she could see for herself that Mal was not dangerous and was not going to enslave anyone. And if Hannah feels that way, then she doesn't have to be a brave hero and continue to suffer. Meanwhile, there was a real panic in the Demon Palace and the monsters didn't realize when the king would return. In such an environment, the monsters did not know what to do, because they were not able to perform even the simplest tasks on their own. But the king's chief advisor Demon Raisin still tried to calm everyone down. Raisin told how he sent Marai to the land of Arlance to try to bring the Demon King back. It gave hope to the monsters who couldn't exist without their ruler. But still Raisin asked them to be patient, because they had to do something until the king returned. But the monsters did not want to work without orders, because otherwise they had never lived. The girl hero Hannah was now looking forward to the future and waiting for a new job. Rael explained that first they had to decide what Hannah wanted to do, but the girl didn't know what to choose. In the end, the young lord asked her to listen to him carefully and said that Hannah could be useful thanks to her spirit power, because it would help her to create the holy sword and make a great profit. This proposal interested young Hannah, for she had not expected to hear such grandiose plans from Rael, and did not even think that she could help create such a legendary weapon. Rael told her about the blade that was already ready, and so the only thing left to do was to put the spirit into this weapon. And it was for this task that the help of a hero like Hannah was needed, and the whole idea belonged to the sage Julius. But Hannah couldn't understand how she would experiment with magical powers without knowing the possible consequences. She had never done anything like this before and she doesn't know what will happen to her powers after creating the weapon. Adventurous Ellen decided that the sage had already thought it over long ago, but most likely had not yet had time to tell all the details of his plan. Hannah all decided to help with the solution to this problem, but only on one condition. First, Hannah wanted to meet with Julius and find out all the details. Julius was at home as usual, resting in his bed, but he was still glad to see Hannah and asked her why she had decided to visit his humble home. The girl was a little surprised at the sight of the local sage. Hannah looked carefully at the strange young man and wondered if he was really such a great sage. Julius confirmed his abilities and thought he had seen this girl before. Hannah also remembered a young man she had met sometimes in the royal capital, but now his aura had changed and he seemed to be a different person. Julius told her how he always admired Hannah's courage and he was a sage in the king's service and sometimes their abilities combined. Hannah resented the sage's behavior in not telling her about his plans to leave the king's capital. But Julius told her about the horrible conditions that he had long been fed up with, and so he decided to leave the king's capital. But anyway, he apologizes for not warning Hannah. Julius explained that he was very worried about the girl when he left her in the royal capital, but she was too obsessed with the spirit of heroism and continued to work without realizing the bad conditions she was in. In her defense, Hannah replied that she did not know about the insidious plans of the unscrupulous minister who had been robbing her all these years and paying her low wages. Then the indignant girl said that she needed something from the wise man, and Julius offered to ask him any questions, because his knowledge allowed him to give good advice on any subject. Rael advised everyone to calm down and not to quarrel, because Julius could help with any problem and Hannah should not worry about it. The young both then offered to discuss making a lightsaber, and Julius asked Hannah if she would be willing to use her magical power. Hannah eventually agreed to contribute to the work. Then Julius asked the girl to lend him her sword, because there should be a special receptacle for the spirit, and the blade would be perfect for this role. But Hannah didn't expect that. The girl hero did not want to give her sword because it is a blade she gave her Demon King Mal. But this only caused laughter at the wise man, because he realized that now Hannah has already managed to change his mind about the Demon King. Rael was quick to reassure the sage and hero and promised to order another good blade from the blacksmith Raydugo. But for now he could use the other sword that was lying idle. The available sword was perfect for absorbing Hannah's spiritual power, and all that was left was to figure out how to do it right. The girl tried to concentrate and activate her powers, but the first attempt was unsuccessful and the powerful magical surge was too strong to be controlled. Hannah eventually realized her mistake and lowered the strength of her spiritual power and put it into the blade. But the result did not impress Sage Julius, because according to his plan, the blade was supposed to turn into a vessel, but now it was glowing too weakly, which meant that the amount of spiritual power was not enough. Although the sage didn't think there would be a problem with moving spirits, he would probably need additional materials from the blacksmith and try to refine this blade to absorb more spiritual power. Yuli, meanwhile, promised to think it over carefully and find the right solution to the problem. But Ryle, despite the failed attempt, was still satisfied with their work together and said that if a holy sword could be made so easily, then most likely everyone would be walking around with such a weapon. So they just need to keep working. But Hannah had to keep working, because until the problem was solved, she couldn't use her spiritual power and would just be idle. Rael promised to definitely find another suitable job, while Julius is engaged in reflection. The young female protagonist thought about what she would like to do, and eventually, overcoming her embarrassment, she declared her desire to work in a bar with the Demon King Mao. But then Hannah started to worry and didn't know if it would be a good idea, since she had originally come here to kill the Demon King. But Rael promised that everything would be fine and Mao would be happy to cooperate with Hannah. The girl was satisfied with the conversation and wanted to go to her new place of work as soon as possible to enjoy her new life. And after saying goodbye to the wise man, all the friends went to the bar. Lou noticed Ryle's thoughtfulness, and the young lord explained that he had actually expected that making the holy sword that Julia had suggested seemed quite simple. But alas, it was not. Lou advised not to worry, because problems can always arise when you start a new business, and so there is no point in regretting anything now. Ryle agreed, because in fact he was always thinking about how to bring a brave hero to his territory. But now Ryle began to realize that it was all part of an elaborate plan by Julius, who had originally hoped that Hannah would end up in this place. In the end, the young lord decided to leave all these problems to Julius, because he's a wise man and that's his job. Soon the friends arrived at Mao's bar and Hannah was getting very nervous about her new job with the Demon King. But after they went inside, they met the Demoness Marai. Demoness, as it turned out, has been here for a long time and was happy to see the appearance of customers. Marai immediately informed Mao about the appearance of his friends, and the Demon King offered to have lunch. Rael asked the King of Demons who exactly this strange girl, and Mao explained that this is an ordinary demoness who recently came from the territory of demons and she is willing to help him work in the bar. Marai, despite her appearance, showed friendliness and joy, calling herself a good worker. But Ryle assumed that this girl had come here to bring the Demon King back to his domain. The Demon King praised Ryle for his insight, for he didn't realize it well, and Marai didn't hide her original intentions at all. Now the demoness was just helping to run the bar, although she was also worried about the arrival of other demons who never waited for her return. But Marai still decided to stay in this bar and help her Demon King and do all his errands. And it all looked very strange to the other girls, and Hannah perceived Marai as a rival. The Demon King offered Marai a job with the customers where she would have to watch what they ordered and help them rest comfortably in his bar. Rael at this point decided to explain to Mao that Hannah wanted to work at the bar too. But the girl's emotions came out and Hannah demanded immediate competition because she was applying for the job too. Rael advised not to organize a duel because it could be dangerous, and the right to choose was left to the bar manager. Mao actually very much liked gambling and any kind of competition, and therefore was interested in such an opportunity to have fun. And in the end, the Demon King suggested to organize a competition on customer service, and the girl liked it. Ellen eagerly started the competition because she also liked gambling. Adventuress immediately tried to calm Ryle and explained that this game will not hurt anyone. Mao in the meantime gathered the rest of the staff and offered them the role of customers to be served. Everything was ready for the competition, and now it was only necessary to find out which of the girls would best serve a demanding customer. The first to begin to show their abilities, Demoness Marai, and she was confident in her abilities. Cunning Demoness immediately charmed the client and asked what he prefers to drink. The young guy could not resist the charms of Marai and instantly fell in love with her, and then wanted to drink with her strong liquor in the evening. A friend of the charmed guy accused him of being thoughtless because he promised to pursue Lou's love, and now he's paying attention to another girl at the first opportunity, and it looks disgusting. The guy's partner suggested that everyone should immediately deal with the situation and condemn such behavior. Such words made the guy in love upset, and he decided not to play the role of a client anymore. But as it turned out, even the magic charm of the demoness was so strong that the guy who for a few minutes called for a proper relationship was already completely in love with Marai. Mao explained that people were unstable to the influence of Marai's magic, and it was a normal reaction, because the girl was a succubus and it wasn't hard for her to make anyone fall in love with her. This is especially true for people who have lived a decent life. Ryle was shocked by this ability that frightened him, because Marai very easily made people show their secret desires and emotions. That was why the Demon King decided to intervene in the situation and help Hannah. Now, as a training client was the controlling Demon King himself, and it made Hannah worried, because she realized how strong his rival was. But all her new friends looked at her hopefully and wished the girl good luck. Hannah was so nervous that she could hardly hold a glass of water on the tray. But Ryle, Ellen and Lou supported her and explained that the first time everyone is nervous and it's normal. But Hannah, despite the fact that she had worked as a hero for years and fought monsters, now felt like a normal excited girl, but still didn't want to lose this opportunity to get a new job. Hannah was afraid to even look into the eyes of the Demon King, realizing that now he was making a choice. After drinking some water, Hannah decided to calm down a little, but Rael advised her not to take it all so seriously and just try to do her new job, because in fact it's nothing difficult. Marai was watching her rival carefully at this point and thought of something. The succubus magical influence helped Hannah feel confident, and she unexpectedly sat down next to the Demon King. The girl was completely under the influence of magic, and now she didn't even realize what she was doing. Hannah, blushing hard, I asked the Demon King if he liked her as a girl. Such words surprised Mao, and he thought that perhaps her glass was not water at all, but still answered that Hannah was an attractive girl. Hannah was happy at this moment and took Mao's hand. The Demon King, realizing Hannah's state of mind, said that he liked many people, among them of course Ryle, Ellen and Lou. This answer made Hannah angry because she was starting a completely different relationship. Mao advised the girl to calm down because her behavior is strange. But the emotions of the hero's girlfriend could not be hidden, and Hannah hugged the Demon King again, calling him a fool who does not understand anything. This behavior of Hannah could not be a joke, and Mao felt at this moment something strange. Mao was now sure that the cause of the young girl Hannah's condition was the Succubus Marai. The cunning demoness explained that she had specially tried to calm the girl, who was very worried, and now Hannah was no longer shy to talk about her feelings. Hannah really no longer held back her emotions and wanted to be together with the Demon King, although she was afraid that her attention did not like Mao. But the Demon King of course just wanted to help the girl get rid of the succubus magic and promised to fix it immediately. But Hannah didn't understand anything and decided that she was indifferent to Mao. Rael was impressed by the succubus girl's abilities and asked me to stop immediately, because now even Mao was in a difficult situation. But Marai thought otherwise and called everything that was happening activation of love feelings, because it will solve many problems and cheer them up. The next victim of succubus magic was the adventuress Helen, who now looked at the young lord quite differently and asked to pay more attention to her and take care of her. After all, no matter how strong she was, she did not want to be alone. The adventurer now looked like a normal woman in love, and she tenderly embraced Ryle and promised to always be a loyal knight and protector for him, because he was the best man in the world. The young lord was shocked by Ellen's behavior, and he barely escaped from the adventuress' embrace and ordered Marai to immediately stop her antics and remove the magic spell from all people. But as it turned out, it was just the beginning, and now under the influence of the succubus fell the modest girl Lou, who like everyone else began to talk openly about his sincere feelings. Lou thanked the young man for his support and help and confessed that she always wanted to be together. Rael found himself surrounded by bewitched girls who sought to embrace him and never let go. Marai was enjoying the results of her magic and having fun, and at that moment Natty and the other residents of the manor came into the bar. The guests were shocked at what was happening, and Marai saw new victims for herself. A few seconds later, the succubus magical influence spread to all the people present, and Marai urged everyone to free themselves from the shackles of modesty and show their sincere feelings. Natty mentally pounced on the young lord and demanded compliments from him. The group of hunters meanwhile began to show their attention to Ellen, for they had admired her skills and loved her for a very long time. The hunters began to make their claims to the young lord, because in their opinion he took away their beloved Helen. All this turned into a nightmare, and Ryle did not understand how to get out of this situation, because everyone was completely under the control of Marai. Ryle demanded to stop all this horror and return people to normal, but the succubus girl was enjoying the whole thing and of course did not want to stop such fun. Marai tried to explain to the young man that he was loved by everyone, and therefore he should respond to this love by giving people what they wanted, and then everyone would be happy. Rael decided to use his influence and asked all the people to catch Marai immediately. All the now excited people who didn't know what they were doing were ready to do the bidding of the person they loved the most at the moment, and instantly identified Marai as their target. But the succubus girl saw it all as a fun game. Into the situation decided to intervene as the Demon King and stop this madness. Mao was able to get rid of the annoying Hannah, who from fatigue simply fell asleep. Mao was able to catch and influence Marai. Eventually, the succubus girl removed her magical influence from the humans and apologized for her behavior. Rail exhaled a sigh of relief, thanking the girl. After all, everyone was just inadequate. Mao ordered the succubus girl to never repeat such situations again, because it could destroy all the relationships between the residents of the estate. After the magical influence had stopped, all the people felt very embarrassed and pretended as if nothing had happened, and Ryle decided to leave everyone alone for a while. But after this incident, Hannah and Marai agreed to work together at the bar and no longer saw each other as rivals. Meanwhile, in the castle of the Demon King, his loyal servant was worried because Marai was too slow to fulfill his mission and never managed to bring the Lord back home. As a result, the agitated demon decided not to wait any longer and deal with the problem himself. The usual monsters offered to send someone else to search for the Demon Lord, but it turned out to be a stupid idea, and in the end, the chief advisor decided to immediately attack the territory of Arlance and destroy everything there. The Demon King's army, which had been idle lately, quickly gathered for a campaign and was determined to find their lord as soon as possible and bring him home, because without him they can do nothing. The demon advisor promised to do everything in his power to bring back the Demon King, and the monsters of course supported this idea. Only the elf girl doubted the idea and did not know if it was right to do so. After the army of monsters went to their king, there were only those who could not fight and newcomers. The girl walked around and didn't understand why she would use violence to bring back the king in such terrible weather. Everything around was so dirty and scattered that the tired girl did not understand how it was possible to continue working in such terrible conditions, because there was no one to clean up the mess. Collecting scattered documents, the girl found a letter from the King of Demons in which he spoke of his desire to leave his domain. Mao wanted to change the situation and think about everything in another place. Meanwhile, the Demon King Mao went for a walk in a large undeveloped forest and felt the presence of a monster, which he called to him. The monster turned out to be a big wolf, and the Demon King asked him to calm down, because no one was going to attack him. The monster felt the aura of the Demon Lord and calmed down. Mao was surprised to meet the monster, and then he remembered that even in the territory of the demons there are many such wolves, and he was wondering how things are without his control. And if they sent Marai, it means that everything is not so good there, and they want their king back. The young Lord Rail was surprised at the absence of the Demon King in the bar and decided that it was probably an important holiday, since Mao had decided to take a break from work. Hannah wiped down the tables and told him how Mao was just going to go for a walk in a large, undeveloped forest. Rail didn't understand why Hannah looked so upset. The bar was unaccustomedly quiet and peaceful without Mao's manager, and even a little dreary. But Ryle didn't understand why he had to go walking alone in such a dangerous forest. Marai was still boisterous and energetic and didn't understand why Hannah was sad. The succubus girl offered to relax with her magic, and then Hannah could see Mao. But Hannah was indignant and said that it was all nonsense and she didn't need to use magic because she wasn't sad for the Demon King. The girls started to argue, and Rail noticed how the girls complimented each other perfectly. One of the guys noticed the young lord and offered him something tasty to eat and promised to prepare a fresh dish quickly, and Ryle gladly accepted the offer. But as it turned out, Ryle's main reason for visiting the bar was food for Julius, who hardly ever left the house, and he needed to take the groceries away. After all, the sage needed to eat well for productive thoughts. Hannah was surprised at the Lord's concern for his subordinate, but Ryle explained that taking care of people gave him pleasure, especially when dining with Julius you can listen to interesting stories. Ryle offered the girl to go with him, and then the three of them had lunch, because it was always possible to start the lunch break a little earlier. The guys at the bar could take care of everything while Hannah was away. Soon the friends were already at Sage Julius' house, and the house was filled with the smell of flavorful food. Everything was so delicious that Hannah was delighted, and Julius advised the girl to chew carefully so as not to choke on it. Hannah looked very comical indeed as she blushed and continued to eat the delicious food with pleasure, and it was the first time Ryle had seen the hero in such an interesting image. The girl was very embarrassed by the attention of the guys and asked Julius not to look at her so closely and not to laugh at her. But the wise man kept smiling, for he had never done so during his work in the royal capital. Hannah and Julius remembered that they had never eaten together before, and Julius confessed that it was much easier and freer for him to work here, and therefore he was happy. In the royal capital, everyone was so busy that they couldn't even have a quiet conversation. Ryle explained that in his domain all kinds of people had gathered together, and if this continued, the population would increase considerably in the future. Then these people would get to know each other better and share experiences and knowledge. And after a while no one would notice the differences between races and origins. The young lord promised to try to fulfill everything he had planned and to make his domain the best place for people to live, where everyone would be happy to work and rest. At that moment the excited voice of one of the peasants was heard, and the boys hurried to find their lord. Ryle hurried out of the house and asked the boys what exactly had happened. Frightened peasants told how they were working in the field and noticed the approach of a huge army of demons that will soon reach the estate and will certainly begin to destroy everything. Just at that moment the demon was already trying his best to motivate the monsters, and pointing forward said that there is a king of demons and they as his loyal subjects must immediately return him. Demon Counselor was sure that the Demon King is in danger, and they must save him because he sent Marai, and she also did not return, and so there is some reason. The demons and monsters were ready to destroy everything in their path and immediately start destroying in order to bring back their favorite Demon King. In the end, everyone rushed to the attack without listening to the speech of his commander, which he had long prepared. The advisor tried to explain that they will still have to face a dangerous man who has already managed to repel an attack once, and therefore they should act carefully during the attack. The demon commander told his subordinates about the deep pits that may be on their way, and so they should watch their feet carefully to avoid falling into such a trap. And also demons must destroy the first girl with red hair, which is because she is the main threat. But the demon was confident in his victory because he counted on numerical superiority and the effect of surprise attack. Demons sought to fulfill the plan as quickly as possible, but adventuress Ellen and other defenders were already ready to attack and watch the approach of the enemy. Ryle, having learned about what was happening, also arrived on the scene. Ellen immediately explained to the young lord that they were being attacked by demons and therefore everyone should be ready. But Ryle immediately suggested that perhaps the demons had come to get their king back. Most likely they thought that Mao was being held by force, and so they organized a military invasion. But Ryle realized that he only had 3 men to confront them and it would be difficult to defend his territory. But the former holy knights weren't going to stay away and arrived on the scene as soon as they heard about the demon's appearance, and now they were ready to defend their new home. The Holy Maiden Lou decided to join in and help defend, but Ryle tried to talk the girl out of it because it was too dangerous. But no one wanted to ignore the threat. The young lord still wanted Lou and the others to evacuate to Julia's house. But the girl decided to stay and explained that of course she couldn't fight, but she could be useful with her recovery magic and wanted to help the wounded. Ryle admired Lou's persistence, for he could not dissuade her. At that moment, Marai decided to join the defenders, because she couldn't stay away when something interesting was going on. Ryle was truly grateful to everyone who decided to help him in such a difficult situation. But in this case they will not be able to solve the problem, because the demons need Mao, and they will leave when the king of demons will return to his castle. But unfortunately Mao is now far away in the big forest, and only Julius with the help of his magic can bring him back. But while Julius will deal with the return of the Demon King, will have to contain the demons for a while, and try to buy time. Rail decided to go out alone and communicate with the enemy. The demons immediately summoned Commander Raisin. The young lord asked the demons to stop their invasion and explained that they were not holding out of the king, so the whole thing was a useless conflict. But Commander Raisin didn't believe the man's words and ordered the monsters to go on the attack immediately. Ellen advised Ryle not to waste energy on convincing the demons because it was useless. The hunters were ready to fight and had their weapons ready, but Ellen decided to handle the problem herself. But the hunters still wanted to help Ellen and didn't want her to get hurt in the battle, but the adventurous girl reminded about her incredible power and promised to deal with all the monsters. The hunters were delighted by Ellen's courage and watched with interest as the brave girl set out to meet her enemies. Rail asked not to overdo it and Helene promised to hold back during the fight. Ellen of course realized that Lord Rail had only 3 experienced warriors at his disposal, but she was ready to fight for all her friends, feeling their support, and on whom she would rely in a difficult situation. Ryle had full confidence in Ellen's abilities and knew that only she would be able to stop the enemies. Meanwhile, Raisin noticed the girl who had thwarted his plans in the past and ordered his troops to destroy her immediately. 2 huge cyclops instantly rushed forward to fulfill the orders of their commander, but Ellen, even in such a difficult situation, was not going to retreat and surrender. Raisin was fully confident that the enormous power of the cyclops would be enough to destroy the red-haired warrior, and now the Demon King would appreciate their loyalty and would definitely return home. While Ellen held back the huge one-eyed giants, the hunters began to fight the rest of the monsters. Hannah, who could now use a normal sword and was about to show her heroic strength, was not left out. Everyone felt confident because they realized that they could be healed by Lou right away. Meanwhile, Marai masterfully used her magical abilities to create a beautiful illusion of a demon king and made a group of monsters communicate and worship a normal stone, completely depriving them of the ability to fight. The demon commander Raisin was shocked because he did not expect to meet such resistance and expected that there would be no strong people except for the girl with red hair. But now his plans as if ruined and he did not know how to fix it. Ellen had no trouble dealing with the monsters and cleared the way for the meeting with the demon commander. The adventurous girl promised to destroy all the demons, and even if there were 10 times as many, it wouldn't make a difference. Raisin began to realize that if this continues, he will not be able to complete his mission, and the monsters began to panic because they were sure that they will not meet such a strong resistance. Just at that moment, the Demon King Mao appeared and ordered Raisin to stop the battle immediately. Everyone was happy to see Mao and realized that now everything would be over quickly. The demon monsters were also happy to see their lord. Mao advised Ryle not to worry about anything else and promised to settle the confusion immediately. Raisin rushed to his ruler, telling him how they had come here on purpose to help Mao. Raisin began to ask the Demon King to return to his domain because things were going very badly without him. At the same time, Commander Raisin believed that his invasion was a complete success, and therefore they could claim these territories. But Mao was furious and advised to listen to his words very carefully. The Demon King, barely restraining his desire to destroy Raisin, said that he was not going to leave this territory, because he had come here of his own free will and wanted to stay. But Raisin, despite the fear, still asked the Demon King why he decided so, because without him in the territory of demons began a real crisis, and Mao must return to settle everything. Mao explained to his subordinates that he is certainly the king of demons, but none of them have not changed their attitude to him and therefore all to blame only their laziness. After all, everyone is used to that he takes care of them and does all the work, and he hoped that when he leaves, but will begin to appreciate. And now if he goes back to his castle, nothing will change, and everything will be the same as before, so he is not going to fulfill the duties of his subordinates. After all, he is a real... In the end, the Demon King decided to end this difficult conversation and just leave. But Raisin at this point asked his lord is it so easy for him to abandon his subordinates, and will quietly watch them suffer. These words made Mao think, and in the end he confessed to his new friends that unfortunately he has a huge responsibility in the territory of Alenza, because there are those who are waiting for his return. Young Lord Ryle decided to fix this problem by another method and suggested that all demonic monsters stay here, and then they can connect the territories and Mao will be able to do what he wants to do, combining two jobs. The Demon King was surprised by such an unexpected proposal, but Ryle explained that he couldn't force Mao to betray his own people, and so they could just become good friends and live together. Especially all these monsters had come all this way, and decided to fight only because they needed their king, and they sincerely hoped to get Mao back even at the cost of their own lives. Then the young lord suggested that the demonic monsters should calm down and solve all the problems by talking, because there was no need to fight and kill each other. But Commander Raisin still accused Ryle of perfidy, saying he would deliberately make the Demon King was in his territory, and most likely he used some strong influence so that Mao would not return home. But the young lord explained that the reason is actually the monsters themselves, who dumped all the problems and worries on their king, and so he simply could not bear the burden. But Commander Raisin did not understand the real reason for his king's action, because he believed that it was perfectly acceptable for Mao to work constantly for their well-being, and now he just had to return and take care of them. Ryle tried to explain that any man, and even the Demon King, is tired of hard work, but no one understood it and his diligence only used, so he decided to get rid of this responsibility and live a quieter life. Gradually, the monsters began to accept the words of the young lord and remembered how they themselves dumped their responsibilities on the king of demons and did not try to help him with solving problems. Ryle said that this is why everyone should always work together so that such misunderstandings never happened, and his territory is a place where each of the people make efforts for the common cause. After all, nothing is more fragile than an organization that relies on one person, and when that person fails, everything falls apart like a house of cards. Raisin was shocked by this truth and gradually began to realize that it was really true. All the people he met fought bravely for their lord. Ryle hoped to change everything, but only if everyone united and worked together. Some monsters began to ask the commander if it was possible to accept such an offer and try something new, But still Raisin, despite all the talk, reminded that they are enemies, and once they certainly had an agreement not to attack each other. But it is unclear how this will apply to work together. Ryle suggested that all they could do was try to cooperate, and then they could succeed. The monsters were excited at the prospect and felt they could do it because they needed the change. Rail asked the Demon King how he felt about the idea, and whether they could teach the monsters to cooperate with humans. Mao was not against starting a major change and organizing cooperation between the two, but he was still worried about the fact that soon it will be known in the royal capital, and then they will face problems that will have to be solved. Rail agreed to this and asked the Demon King whether he could perform 2 jobs in parallel, but Mao that with this should not be a problem after all. They are going to work together, and the young lord announced in that case that now in this territory will be new rules, and each new employee will have to choose the right conditions and profession. Because for example Ellen is engaged in hunting due to her excellent fighting skills, Lou does not like to appear in public and therefore prefer to work in the office, and wise Julius perfectly performs his work just lying on the bed. Now thought about how to organize everything properly, and at some point even decided that maybe he should just go back to his castle and not bother Ryle with his problems. But in that case nothing would change in his life. Then the Demon King turned to his subordinates. Perhaps he did not pay enough attention to them, and therefore they did not understand how to work properly and did not use all their capabilities. But Raisin asked Mao not to apologize because he is the king and will always be their hero. The demon commander and the monsters promised to work hard from now on and not to make any more mistakes they had made in the past. Mao was impressed and Ryle marveled at such a great motivation. The Demon King was so shocked by the changes in his subordinates that he could hardly contain his emotions, and finally said that he was proud of his people and ready to help them develop and become better. But then Mao asked young London what he could teach his subordinates, because he works only as a bar manager and in fact he knows nothing else but that. Just at that moment the sage Yuli intervened in the conversation with the help of his magic bird. Julie asked for more details about the past work of the Demon King and all his subordinates, because based on this he will assign a new job to everyone that will be perfect for any demonic being. Now Julia, but the sage asked you to assist him in this matter, because this way they will be able to more carefully select the profession of each new resident. Demons were delighted with the new prospect of development, and it remained only to wait for the decision of the King of Demons. As a result, Mao's subordinates to begin changes and development to open a new chapter in the history of the demonic people. It really became a historic event, and now the monsters felt much better, especially they were offered to dine on delicious food. But still Little warned his subordinates that they would have to travel a difficult path to get there. Rail, meanwhile, asked the sage why he had decided to take on this difficult job, for he did not like such a problematic ordeal. But the sage explained that he knows the territory of the demons perfectly well, and can easily understand the abilities of each creature, and with his knowledge he will benefit and develop future cooperation. And in the future, together they will be able to make this magnificent place unique, where the different races can perfectly interact and forget those terrible years when they were feuding and seeking to destroy each other. These words were a great impetus for the motivation of the monsters and the Demon King himself, because they really wanted to live a better life, and not to experience difficulties in even the simplest of worries. In the meantime, another girl had learned about working in the territory of Arlens and familiarized herself with the incredible conditions. But she also knew that the land was under attack by monsters and it scared her a bit. But the local Lord Rail offered excellent conditions and was reconstructing his territory. The girl doubted that this was true and assumed that perhaps it could all be a joke, but she was still curious. After all, she was a former maid of the Arlens Lord family, and she can't help but think about the place where she lived for many years. After all, if they were attacked by monsters, then she must help everyone she can. But now the young lord was at peace and was happy to see the quality of the food was getting better, but unfortunately the quantity was still not great, and he had to keep growing. One of the farmers was happy that the monsters would no longer attack their fields, and now he could work at full capacity. The threat of demons had really disappeared, and now people had smiles on their faces. The demons have also been given new jobs and are gradually finding common ground with the locals. The economic situation has greatly improved, but there was still a lot of undeveloped land, and so the young lord was constantly thinking about how to increase the number of his population. In the long run, Lord Ryle hoped to increase his income several times over, because it was the most pressing problem to begin to actively develop their territories. But on this matter could always advise the sage Julius. This time the young lord was surprised to see the sage not lying on the bed and asked if he had already started working so early. Julius had indeed long since woken up and even changed his clothes. As it turned out, the wisest man was starting a new project but has not yet had time to start working on the territory of demons, and the young lord asked what exactly Julius is doing. But as it turned out, the wise man is engaged in the search for a new source of income, and it was for what came Rael. Julius pointed to the map and suggested that the lord find a place he cared about, and Rael looked at the map of his territory with interest. Julia explained that since the city had expanded southward, they had been able to add a very interesting mountain to their territory. But as it turned out, the young lord had never been there and did not know what the value of this area was. Julia told him how these mountains had long been famous for the production of the rare metal Mithril, and that there was a good chance that it could be mined in this mountain. Rael knew little about this metal but speculated that it might be expensive. The sage explained that the aristocratic territory had been ruled for decades solely by the production of Mithril, for this beautiful metal is one of the strongest, and it is also valued for its incredible beauty. Also, another advantage is that it is very easy to magical powers. Therefore, this unique material is ideal for the production of the holy sword, and if they have the right amount, they will be able to organize mass production. Rael was delighted with his advisor's wisdom and asked when they would go to explore this interesting mountain. But Julius first wanted to find out who exactly this mountain belonged to. After all, if by chance this area belonged to the aristocratic territory of the south, a military conflict could arise because of it. Therefore, the lord must first find the documents confirming the ownership of this mountain, and Rael promised to take care of this matter. Meanwhile, the former maid had already reached the territory of Arlens, who were surprised that all the buildings were absolutely intact and undamaged, although it could not be after the attack of the monsters. The girl assumed that maybe everything was not as she had imagined and wanted to find out the details. She loved being in this place and remembered the wonderful times she had lived here. She was also afraid of various problems and did not want to announce her arrival until the right moment. Just at that moment, the young girl noticed Lord Rael, who kept thinking about the important documents he needed to find. Suddenly, the emotions overwhelmed the former maid and she rushed towards the lord. And the emotions were so strong that the girl could not keep on her feet and lost her balance and then collapsed on the floor. The young lord rushed to help the girl and was surprised to recognize her as Marin. Soon after, the healer Lou had helped her. Marin regained consciousness and was surprised to realize she was in the room. Lou advised her not to worry and promised to return later. Soon the young lord himself appeared, and of course he was happy to see Marin, whom they had not met for a long time. The girl again reacted emotionally but was warned that she should still rest. Lord Rael realized that cooperation with the demon territory could cause huge problems for his domain, but still he decided to take such a risk for the sake of the general development and well-being. One day the demon king Mao went to the demon territory to carefully organize their work. Meanwhile, Yuli decided to go to the royal capital to get from the king the documents confirming the right to mining. It was all for the sake of finding the unique metal Mithril as soon as possible and using it to organize the production of holy weapons, and now the young lord was sure that this task was almost completed. The young lord was already prepared for the journey to the mountain. Of course, the chief blacksmith Ragudo was also very interested in this expedition and demonstrated the beautiful armor that he created from Mithril. Rael thanked the master for his excellent work and promised to do his best to get more of this fine material. A carriage was prepared for the journey to cut down on travel time. All the more everyone realized that if they went on foot they would be very tired, and they would need their strength when they were near the mountain. Of course, the carriage was a bit cramped because of the large amount of cargo, but everyone was in high spirits despite the fact that they had to leave their home. Ragudo was glad to be able to travel with the lord and enjoy a delicious meal during the trip. Everyone was already used to the comfort of their work and of course knew that their lord would do anything for the general welfare. Lord Rael was truly happy that he was able to create a great environment for his people, after all, so they could work much more efficiently and enjoy life. Unexpectedly, the healer Lou decided to join the expedition and explained that she could be useful during this journey with her abilities, because if someone gets hurt, she will immediately help and heal him, and she wants to be close to Rael. The young lord did not want to upset the girl and stop her in her endeavor. After all, he already knew what strong feelings Lou had and did not want to make her suffer. Lou was a little surprised by Lord's openness and asked him not to say such ambiguous words. Soon all the friends were in the wagon and off they went to meet their adventures. Of course, all the other residents of the estate wished good luck to the young town and hoped for its speedy return. Meanwhile, in the neighboring county, which was located south of Arlent's territory, the situation was becoming more and more critical every day. The people had no work and many of them were starving, and there were even cases of people starving to death. The lord of this territory certainly understood the problems he faced, but still he tried to avoid meeting with ordinary people. He did not know how to help them and solve all these problems. The ruler of these territories carefully looked at the map where there was a mine with a deposit of Mithril, and he would like to get hold of this deposit and get rich. But his advisor reminded him that this area now belonged to a neighboring ruler. This information did not please the lord, and he thought that it was all a mistake. Especially the lands of Arlance were attacked by monsters, and most likely because of the war they do not pay attention to this field. But the counselor warned that if you search the documents in the royal capital, it will be obvious that this territory already belongs to Lord Arlance. Moreover, all transactions between territories are fixed in the royal capital, and it will be difficult to circumvent these rules. But the lord was serious and proposed to rewrite the report in the royal capital after all. He had a good friend of the minister who was inclined to take bribes and forge important documents. Minutes Lord decided to immediately go to the royal capital and solve this problem, and ordered his advisor to send workers to the mine and start extracting Mithril. After all, they had to get a huge profit as soon as possible. Counselor Sebastian still had doubts about this venture and asked Lord Uthred if he was sure of his actions. But Lord Uthred promised to solve all problems and advised him not to worry, which he did. During the journey, the friends discussed the purpose of their trip and at some point realized that according to the map they had half a day to reach their destination. But no one really knew what condition the mine would be in. The young lord figured that if the mine was not well maintained, it would take much longer to extract the Mithril. But it was hard to judge that now. Especially in mining is very difficult, and digging instead of fencing with need on minerals, and it takes a lot of effort and time to do so. Also, you can find a lot of groundwater, toxic gases, and other hazards like mine collapse, so there could always be doubts about whether the material needed could be mined effectively. But Alin advised not to worry because together they had to deal with Anya's problem. Especially, she took with her a beautiful pickaxe endowed with magical powers. Julius's sage had given magic power to the pickaxe made by the blacksmith, and they had 3 such tools. Julius counted on the fact that these beautiful tools will allow to dig as quickly as possible and get to the Mithril, and of course to ease the hard work of the miner and reduce the time of extraction. But the young lord was still worried that Ellen would be able to destroy the mine, because she had great strength and each blow with her pickaxe would create a huge fluctuation. Rael eventually forbade the adventuress to use the pickaxe because it could lead to an explosion in the mine. The girl finally agreed, because she realized that she could harm her friends with her actions. But of course this was not the only problem, and the workers asked how things were with the territories of the neighboring county. After all, the mine they were claiming was located to the south of the Aisland territory, so there was a danger of conflict and disputes over the right to possess such valuable deposits of rare metal. Ryle admitted that he had never personally met the neighboring lords, but he still hoped that they would be reasonable and that they would familiarize themselves in advance with the necessary documents that would confirm his right to own the mountain. But Lou told about how the neighboring county a few years ago changed the lord, and he is notable for his intemperate character. But in any case, everyone hoped for the neighbors and that there would be no claims on the Mithril deposit. And just at that moment, the coachman reported that a mine had come into sight and that they would soon be there. The young lord and his friends marveled at the sheer size of the mountain. They had no idea what it would be like. Now all they had to do was get to the mine and find out if it was what they needed. The young lord advised everyone to be careful and help each other during the descent into the mine. But Ryle had no time to speak. Suddenly the wagon came to an abrupt halt and the horses began to scream. Such an abrupt stop could not be normal, and so after recovering from the fall the young lord decided to find out what caused the sudden stop and get out of the strip as soon as possible. After a few seconds there was a terrible scream of a man who was apparently running away from some monster. Lord Rael was shocked, for he had not counted on such surprises. The creature, resembling a huge worm or snake, was colossal in size, and people were frightened and ran away from the mountain. But thanks to the fearlessness of the adventurer, Ellen Lord was calm because the girl was ready to destroy the monster. But after a few fierce attacks it turned out that this monster will not be so easy to destroy because it has an incredibly strong skin. Ellen immediately thought of other methods of fighting. While the adventuress was fighting the monster, the young lord ordered the frightened people to immediately load into the wagon, and the fleeing workers thanked the savior for this opportunity, because they no longer had the strength to run away. Ryle was surprised that Ellen's powerful blow was powerless against this terrible monster, but it looked like its body surface was like stone and therefore it would be impossible to destroy it with ordinary weapons. But after a few minutes the young lord had a great idea. and he advised the girl to use a magnificent pickaxe endowed with magical energy, and Ellen hurried to take the advice. The powerful blows of the magical pickaxe were so effective that the monster immediately received critical damage, and it was only necessary to kill it, which Ellen did. Soon after that, the friends approached the mine and were surprised, because it was in a pretty good condition and exceeded all expectations. There was also a cozy miner's hut near the entrance to the mine. Ryle remembered his father, to whom he was grateful for the useful knowledge he had gained. Lou, meanwhile, reported the completion of the treatment of the wounded men, who were most likely from the neighboring county. Ryle was interested and decided to talk to these people. The young lord immediately explained that this mine belonged to him and was surprised that these workers didn't know any of this, because their lord had just ordered them to go to this mine and mine Mithril. It was surprising, and Ryle did not understand how it was possible to do that, because the neighbors should have known that this mountain belonged to him. But Ellen advised him not to be surprised and not to treat the outsiders too well. Ryle also asked the workers if there were no other similar mines in their ruler's territory where they could mine Mithril. But as it turned out, all the other mines had already been emptied, and that was the reason why the entire county was filled with unemployed people. Ellen immediately assumed that the neighboring earl was probably planning an invasion of other countries to replenish the resources. The adventuress immediately proposed to punish the insolent neighbors who had deliberately arranged this provocation. One of the workers asked to let everyone else go and decided to accept the punishment. But the young lord, of course, was not going to blame ordinary people for the crimes, and was only surprised to learn that they had been mining Mithril for many years. In the end, Ryle suggested that the workers cooperate and mine Mithril together, because that way they could work much more efficiently, and help each other and settle all disputes. Ellen was surprised and did not understand why they would do such a thing, because in front of them were those people who deceived them. But Ryle tried to explain to the adventurer that in front of them were skilled workers who would be useful to them. After all, working with such professionals is much safer and more reliable than they will try to extract rare metal in harsh conditions on their own. The young lord suggested that the workers share their skills and knowledge, and then he would not blame them for anything. Ryle also promised to give them half of the mine Mithril. The workers were so surprised that they didn't even believe in such a generous offer, but they explained that they couldn't make such decisions without the consent of their ruler. But Ryle told me to worry and explained that he was their lord. These words made the miners even more excited, and they didn't know what to do now. But the young lord offered to calm down and eat some good food. Everyone enjoyed the delicious food after the long journey, and the miners finally calmed down after the attack of the terrible monster and now rested and regained their strength and peace. The food was so much enjoyed by the miners that they were delighted by the taste of the flavorful soup. After all, they had not eaten anything like it for a long time and even asked for a refill. But still, the miners were worried and sad because they were always thinking about their families who were still starving, and they could only help their families if they got Mithril and made money. In the end, the chief miner still promised to help extract this rare material to Lord Rale. From this situation, they had no choice but to cooperate. The young lord was pleased with the result of their communication and hoped to make these people his subjects. But the chief miner immediately warned all the newcomers that mining is very hard work, and they should be prepared for it. Rale is confident in his abilities and suggested that everyone should try their best together. For the first time in his life, Ryle found himself in the enclosed dark and damp space of the mine, which was lit only by small lanterns, and began to realize what hard work all these people were doing. Once at the site of the Mithril deposit, the young lord offered the miners the use of their magical pickaxes. After the first blows, the workers appreciated the quality of the tools, because it was much easier to work with such tools. While everyone was working hard and forgetting the rare metal Mithril, other guys were carefully preparing lunch. Mutually beneficial cooperation allowed to communicate and get to know each other better, and in the end everyone got the desired result. After a few hours of hard work, they managed to get to a large deposit of rare metal, and it caused a real delight for the young lord, who for the first time in his life felt like a real miner. The Mithril looked incredible and seemed like something magical. Everyone was delighted with the result of their work and thanked each other for their help, because together they were able to achieve great results much faster. Lord Rale was happy that he had met such professional workers, but the miners were also grateful to the young lord, because thanks to his help they were able to earn money and will now provide for their families. The miners admitted that they had never worked in this way before and were very confused at first. They had always worked non-stop, but Ryle had advised them to take breaks and finish their work when the sun went down. This was surprising to the miners, and they wondered if this was how all people worked. Rale talked about how such rules apply to all his people, because for him people are the most important thing. The miners also realized that thanks to this mode of work they did not get tired so much and did not get injured and even enjoyed their work. The miners thanked the young lord for his help and suggested that this mine could yield a lot more mithril in the future. Ryle and work together because he needs professional workers like them and therefore they will help each other to develop. But the miner explained that he appreciated the offer, but that they still had families in Istrada and could not agree to stay here. Ryle of course understood, but had no way to influence this. In the end, Ryle offered to take half of the metal they had mined and feed their families that way. Ellen praised her lord for his generosity, but then wondered what he was going to do next, for it was obvious that the neighboring lord would not give up his attempts to seize this expensive deposit, and would send more men. Ryle of course wanted to solve this problem as soon as possible, and for this purpose he was going to organize negotiations, during which he would discuss the situation with this mine. But in any case, the lord was also interested in the professional miners. Ryle even offered the miners to drive them home in his carriage, because it would be nice to take this opportunity to go to the territory of Istrada, and thus he would increase his rating among ordinary people. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, a meeting had already been arranged between Lord Jutrid and his old friend Minister Ido. The lord was sure that he would be able to bribe his friend, and together they would make the necessary documents. Minister Ido pretended to be very busy and was not too happy about the visit of his old friend. But Lord Jutrid immediately explained that he had a favorable offer and he would like the minister to remove from the royal accounting records of transactions of mines that were leased. Minister Ido was interested and said that the territory in question had long been under the control of Lord Ryle, and it was known that the demon lord also lived there. As a result, the hero Hannah was sent there, but until she returned with news. Minister Ido of course immediately realized that his friend Lord wanted to erase all records and regain possession of this valuable mine. Lord Jutrid confirmed his wish and thanked his old friend for his insight. Although in fact the minister did not expect to hear such a strange request, because the Istrad estate under the previous rulers was considered the best in the kingdom and over the years has overcome a huge path of development. But now everything was different and the area had become terrible. Jutrid of course understood that the minister was criticizing his management of the territory, but only offered to accept a small chest of money as a reward. Minister Ido immediately appreciated the quality of the offered mithril, and the lord promised to provide more jewelry and money in the future if they succeeded. Minister Ido immediately agreed, for his greed was far above moral principles. Lord Jutrid was pleased with the outcome of the meeting, for he believed that the mine now belonged to him and that he would do anything to protect his territory. In the meantime, Ryle would negotiate a peace treaty during which he would be able to solve the problem. Developed rapidly, Julius and Natty were in the royal capital and wanted to prepare documents on the right to mine. Meanwhile, the Demon King and his assistant were organizing the workflow in the demon territory. The kingdom capital, Lord Jutrid and Minister Ido were conspiring, and Ryle along with Lou and Ellen wanted to negotiate. Natty strolled through the streets of the capital and met an old acquaintance, Seth, and asked how the merchant she worked for was doing. As it turned out, he was doing well and was always looking for new ways to make money. The girl told him that she would soon meet the king and was on her way there with the great sage. Seth was impressed by such news. He could not even imagine such a thing before. Natty was quite pleased with the young man's attention and said that the great sage relied on her completely, and that she had achieved considerable success and had become an excellent merchant. But Seth did not realize where exactly the great sage was now, and only now Natty noticed his absence. Just at this moment in the royal capital was a lonely girl who felt uncomfortable in this noisy environment. But she also needed to meet the king. Unexpectedly, Lord Jutrid passed by her side. The girl heard a snippet of conversation when the lord told his aide that Minister Ido would take care of everything, and they should get home as soon as possible before anyone noticed them. The king was busy with important matters as usual, studying the details of the negotiations with the Hellege Empire, and his aide was constantly bringing in new documents and important news. This mode of work made the king very tired and he could not cope with the flow of documents. After a while, the king was informed about the visit of the great sage Julius, and his majesty immediately offered to pass the important guest. Apparently it was always interesting to communicate with such a wise man. Julius was happy to meet the king for whom he had worked for many years. King Qasim himself was happy to meet his favorite sage that immediately embraced him and decided that now Julius will be able to help him with the problems of the kingdom. But the great sage said that he needed the king to show the certificate of ownership of the mine, which is located in the south of the territory of Arlens. This information caused O King to think. Then he began to remember that he had already heard about this mine and even sent his best hero Hannah to that territory. Julius asked the king not to worry and told him that Hannah was living as a joyful citizen of Arlens. As a result, the king agreed to help his favorite sage and ordered his aide to immediately find records of such transactions. In the meantime, Minister Ida was already searching for the necessary records and had already found them. A few minutes later, the king himself found himself in the archives with his aides and was surprised to find Minister Ida there, and the minister was shocked to see such an unexpected appearance of the king himself. The minister was also surprised to see the sage Julius, who had not been in the royal capital for many years. Julius noticed the necessary documents in the minister's hands and thanked him for his help. Julius of course knew what the minister was capable of and asked him if he had accidentally conspired with Lord Jutrid to illegally execute the documents for the ownership of the mineral deposit. The minister was shocked by the sage's insight, and his facial expression betrayed his excitement. The king of course also noticed the minister's state of mind and asked what was going on. But the minister was satisfied that he had not yet had time to do anything with the documents and there was nothing to accuse him of. The minister explained that he was just putting the records in order and that he was not going to do anything important. But Yule knew how much of a liar the minister was to you and advised him not to take any sneaky actions. The great sage looked carefully into the minister's face and promised not to let him get away with it if he did decide to forge documents and transfer part of the territory to another person. The minister could no longer deny the obvious and immediately began to apologize to the king for his foolish ideas, and then promised not to do anything that could harm the kingdom and blamed Lord Jutrid for everything. The sage with Yule was pleased with the result of his communication with the minister and advised him to tell as much as possible about all the circumstances of the meeting with the Lord, for the king would be interested to know about it. Meanwhile, the wagon was gradually approaching the estate of Lord Jutrid and the miners were surprised at Ryle's desire to meet their master. But the young lord advised me to worry, because he just wanted to talk. But the miners of course knew better than anyone their master and tried to explain to the little lord that he would have to talk to not the best man who hates other people. During his reign, the people suffer greatly, but Lord Jutrid does not care about these problems at all. In fact, even now he has tricked them into going to the mines of foreign territory, even though under the previous rulers they had excellent jobs and were well paid for them. Lord Rail replied that he had already heard about this man and he would be interested to talk to a lord who so blatantly tries not to take care of his people and find out why he does it. But Lou explained that in fact there are many such lords, and Ellen told about the leadership of the guild where she worked, because they also treated their employees badly. They took away most of her profits and didn't compensate her for her equipment and illnesses. All of the young lord's other friends also talked about how badly they had lived in the past, but now things had changed for them and they were no longer subjected to the insidious treatment of their masters. As a result, an argument even broke out in the wagon during which everyone wanted to find out which one of them had been in the worst conditions. The young horse watched with interest as everyone talked about the terrible conditions and decided that it was even funny because their problems had turned into a competition to brag about their misfortune. But if things were really that bad, it was unclear what it was that attracted people to do such terrible work and endure attitudes they didn't deserve. Rail decided to find out more about the local lord and see if he was really such a bad man. Soon the wagon was at its destination and now all that remained was to meet Lord Jutrid. The miners said that the atmosphere in this place was terrible lately because there was no work and all the people were suffering from lack of food. Then the chief miner met his family and was happy to hug his own children. Gradually, the streets were filled with children's laughter and all the miners who had arrived home began to meet their relatives whom they tried to take care of and for whom they did very hard work. It was at this moment that the young lord realized that even if a person has no work or money, he still has a lot of important things in life, such as loved ones and children. After meeting his family, the chief miner offered to take care of his family. After some time about the arrival of the miners who arrived with the lord of the neighboring lands, and this young lord wants to have a conversation with Lord Jutrid. Sebastian thought about the reasons for the neighboring landlord's visit and realized that it could be all related to the mine. But he didn't expect this problem to manifest so quickly. As a result, Sebastian decided to take charge and talk to the guests. Sebastian received the important guest at Lord Jutrid's manor as politely as possible and introduced himself as his lord's manager and personal assistant, with whom he could discuss any questions. The chief miner showed the mine Mithril and Sebastian praised him for his excellent work, but then the miner asked him to clarify who exactly owns the birthplace of the minerals. At this point Rail asked the miner not to worry, The young lord introduced himself and explained that he had come on important business, but Sebastian pointed out that his guest was too young to understand the situation. Ryle then explained how the past lords had exchanged territories and now the mine was his territory, so he would like to discuss the situation with Lord Jutrid personally. Sebastian thanked him for the visit and was surprised that the young lord was not aggressive, because in fact he was right and the workers had invaded his territory, which is not acceptable. Sebastian then apologized for the inconvenience and explained that his ruler was not present at the moment and so Lord Rail could repeat his visit another day for an important conversation. Ellen and Lou were indignant at this, for they did not trust Sebastian and began to ask them many questions. But Sebastian continued to smile politely and advised them to come another day. Ellen was hostile and immediately accused them of invading someone else's territory and promised that they would not let it go. Ellen urged Lord Ryle not to trust Sebastian's words, but the young lord advised everyone to calm down. This behavior of Ryle's made Sebastian think, because it was not like the lord's behavior. Ryle eventually decided to talk to Sebastian and asked him to listen to just one request. Ryle told him about the successful mining of Mithril that happened only thanks to a highly skilled miner, and so he gave some of this rare material as payment. The young lord then asked Sebastian to personally see to it that the miners received a fair wage. This surprised Sebastian, for he had never met a man who cared about the welfare of his workers before. Sebastian thanked him for his important advice and then asked why Ryle didn't take care of his own territories. After all, he must realize that he could soon be attacked by demons and then he would face a deadly danger that could lead to total collapse, and his people would simply be destroyed by the monsters. Sebastian wanted to anger his interlocutor in order to make Ryle show his true feelings, but Ryle was well aware of such tricks and said that such provocations are meaningless. Ellen proudly declared that the monsters are no longer a threat to the territory of Alenza, because together with them live a variety of races and no longer show hostility to each other. Ryle noticed how surprised Sebastian was and invited him and his lord to visit his domain. The young lord kindly extended his hand and told him that his territory was a place where all races lived together and cooperated for the same purpose, so they would be happy to receive visitors. Sebastian was shocked by the offer and the information he had heard, but still realized that the young lord was not lying. Sebastian admitted that it was hard for him to believe it and he did not understand how it could be done. Ellen told him that all the residents of the Alenza territory work voluntarily and receive a well-deserved salary. They are also provided with rest and excellent food and therefore they do not have any problems. The adventuress declared that her young lord was very different from Lord Jutrid, who thought only of himself and so all the villagers loved him. But Sebastian refused to believe this. Sebastian explained that you can't judge a person just on rumors. After all, no one present had worked with Lord Jutrid and so all accusations are groundless. Lord Ryle was surprised by Sebastian's sudden change of mood and continued to listen attentively to him. Sebastian talked about how his lord was able to foresee the future and so he is trying to find new sources of mithril to supply his territory and the inhabitants. Also, Lord Jutrid is trying to grow various crops that could feed the population, trying to lower tax rates and attracting various traders, so he is very careful to take care of his territory. This was all in the past, of course, and Sebastian realized it himself, but he couldn't accuse his lord of inaction and stupidity, so he continued to lie. Ryle asked why Lord Jutrid was not listening to his people now, but Sebastian disagreed and accused the people of not listening to their lord, thinking that mithril was worth much more and they should get more money. And Mr. Jutrid tried to conduct experiments in the economy, but no one supported him. Sebastian said that he will not allow to speak ill of his lord and call him a tyrant because it is not true, and despite the fact that he is his loyal servant, he believes that Jutrid is the best ruler. And in the future his lord will definitely do everything and restore his territories and of course provide welfare to his people, because these territories are the most powerful and promising on the entire continent. See, it was known that he was trying to conspire with Lord Jutrid to take another man's territory. The only thing the soldiers were worried about was that this could lead to military conflict in the future, and if it did, of course there would be many casualties. As far as it was known, the king himself had decided to intervene in this situation. All this information was of course already available to the high priest, and he decided not to bother the king at the moment, because everything that was happening gave him hope that Lord Rail would finally get the punishment he deserved. Though of course the high priest wanted to be sure that his offender would be punished, and so he asked for the help of the Holy Lady of Power, who could help him in his revenge. Minister Ido, in prison, blamed Lord Jutrid for asking him to erase important records in the ledgers about the transfer of the rights to the mithril deposit, and now the minister regretted it. Everything the minister had spent years trying to achieve, all the money he had saved and earned, had vanished in an instant, and now he was left with nothing. But suddenly the head priest appeared outside his prison cell. The minister was surprised and asked why the head priest had come to visit him in such conditions. But the Lord High Priest explained that he wanted to help because he thought that the minister had been detained unjustly. But the minister reminded him of the great risk and the king's retribution. But the minister was confident in his abilities and asked him to promise him one important favor. Minister Ido promised to give all the Mithril. The new Holy Maiden wanted all the valuable materials available, and this surprised the minister, who had first seen this strange and mysterious girl. But the high priest explained that this maiden was now his new assistant. Suddenly at that moment the doors of the prison opened, and now the minister was ready to do anything to get freedom. But all this seemed very strange, for he did not understand how the high priest could get in here, for there was a great number of guards. But then the minister noticed the guards lying on the floor, and the high priest told him not to worry, because all these people were fast asleep, which means they have time to leave this horrible place and get on with more important things. Meanwhile, Sebastian continued to be alone as he recalled the moment in his life when he was appointed steward and personal advisor to Lord Jutrid. Sebastian had promised to serve faithfully and obey all orders on that exciting day, but the Lord had ordered him not to waste his energy on foolish talk and to speak as equals in the future. The Lord asked Sebastian what he liked most about this life and what he disliked most, as well as what he wanted to accomplish in this life. Sebastian thought about the answer but could not formulate anything concrete. The Lord was disappointed, calling it a very weak answer for his steward. Then Lord Jutrid suggested that the young Sebastian play chess with him, as it was a great opportunity to think and get to know each other better, and to show his intellectual abilities. He asked Sebastian if he had played chess before and if he knew how to use the pieces. As it turned out, young Sebastian only superficially created the rules, and the Lord explained that it is a great game, shows the whole essence of man, and he will prove it. And after only a few minutes the game was over, and to the Lord's surprise he lost to the young and inexperienced player. Jutrid was shocked and accused Sebastian of cheating, because he had specially prepared for the game and hid it. And the Lord called his new manager a representative of the most disgusting type of people. But Sebastian did not worry about it and recalled that the Lord himself called him too weak. This angered Jutrid even more, who had not expected such insolence. Then Sebastian explained to the Lord that he was playing too cautiously and was afraid of losing pieces on the board. In order to win in any battle, you must be able to sacrifice your pieces. Jutrid eventually agreed with Sebastian's instructions, but admitted that he did not like to sacrifice pieces even if it was the only way to win. After all, when you lose someone it always causes regret. Sebastian advised the Lord in this case never to play chess again. After all, with such a mindset he is not made for this pragmatic and cunning game. Jutrid advised Sebastian not to be so confident, because he won only once, but Sebastian promised that such a result will always be. In the end, Sebastian's calculations were confirmed, and no matter how many times they played chess, Lord Jutrid could not win a single game, and this only confirmed the words of the young manager Sebastian that you need to sacrifice pieces. Just at that moment Lord Jutrid returned and made Sebastian forget his memories, for now he had a lot of new information to tell his lord. Lord Jutrid of course knew nothing of Minister Ido's fate yet, and so he was fully confident that he had obtained ownership of the mine and they could start mining Mithril. Sebastian congratulated his master for a successful trip. Sebastian immediately told him that the miners had returned and were able to extract enough Mithril. But then Sebastian wanted to talk about a reward for the miners. But Lord Jutrid stated that there was no need for this, as ordinary people should work for the good of their territory and be thankful for this opportunity, as they could do nothing but work. Sebastian did not argue with his lord and then informed him of the arrival of Lord Ryle, who wanted to discuss the disputed territory where the mine was located, and he stated Lord Jutrid had full confidence in his success and offered to go immediately to visit a neighboring lord to settle the matter once and for all. But Sebastian still doubted this idea, and then explained that the young lord is a very dangerous opponent, whose actions are difficult to predict, and in a conversation with him one should be extremely careful. But Lord Jutrid was still confident and ordered to immediately prepare the horses. Jutrid advised Sebastian not to worry, because now he has all the trump cards to finally claim this mine rich in Mithril. In the meantime, the young lord and his friends returned home and were greeted by all the people of the manor, who had been waiting for Ryle's arrival for a long time and were worried about him. Everyone wanted to know the details of the journey as soon as possible and to see the Mithril that was mined in the mine. The young lord greeted the villagers and asked how they had been doing during his absence. Ryle was surprised to learn that Julius's group and the Demon King's group had not yet returned home, so he waited for the wise man and then thought about how to proceed. It was a wise decision, and Ellen decided to stay by her lord's side for a while. The blacksmith Ragudo was ready to start working with the new great material, and the young lord advised him to build the holy sword, a handy weapon that would allow them to be even more successful. The blacksmith promised to do his best and forge the finest sword possible. But first, of course, everyone wanted to get some rest. For the next few days, everyone was busy with their chores. She trained her hunters, the blacksmith Ragudo tried his best to forge the best sword, and Hannah rested in the absence of the Demon King. Ryle and Lou were tidying up documents and making important calculations together. A few days later, Lord Jutrid came to visit his rival and stated that he valued his time and therefore he should be escorted immediately to Lord Rail for an important conversation. Lord Jutrid tried to be as confident as possible and said that he had heard about the visit to his estate, and therefore decided to make a return visit. Ryle explained that he wanted to talk about the mine, but that he had not expected to see a guest in his home. Lord Jutrid immediately said that the conversation would be very short, because the mine belonged to him alone and there was nothing to discuss. Ryle reminded about the contract between their houses, but Jutrid didn't want to hear anything. Then the self-confident lord presented a certificate of ownership from the minister Ido himself, thanks to which all questions about the owner of the mine disappeared. Ryle was shocked by such insolence and could not believe in the authenticity of the document, because he was sure that the mine belonged to him. But Jutrid in such a case advised his rival to show some documents too and not to be unsubstantiated. But the young lord could not do so, and this only made Jutrid more confident, who declared that he now forbade any representative of Lord Rail to enter his territory, much less the territory of this mine. And if one were to violate this agreement, it would be considered aggression and retaliation would follow. After this short conversation, Jutrid stated that he would now go home and do some important business, and his workers would immediately start mining mithril in this magnificent mine. Ryle was furious at such insolence and guile and then asked his opponent if the mine mithril belonged by right to the inhabitants of his territory or if they received no rewards for its sale. Lord Jutrid did not understand the meaning of these questions at all and only looked at the young lord contemptuously. But Ryle reminded his rival that this had never happened in his territory before and people were valued, but now they were starving to death. Ryle explained that he had been talking to Sebastian and had learned a lot about Jutrid, who in the past had offered various economic solutions that didn't depend on mithril mining. But now for some reason everything had changed and the Lord had stopped listening to his people and did not care about them. Jutrid was surprised that Sebastian had said those exact words. Ryle noticed that he was worried and asked why he was trying to mine mithril at such a high price, and Jutrid explained that he was trying to protect and develop his territory. But at some point he realized that to achieve victory he had to sacrifice his pawns, and the pawns are ordinary people whose interests are not taken into account for the sake of the most important goal. After all, these are all ordinary people see only mithril in front of them, which means that they deserve to be treated as mere pawns and should not think about their well-being and future for in this way. The Lord would not be able to share the joy of life with his subjects, and so it is to him that nothing matters but mithril and money. These words made Jutrid lose control of his emotions, and he grabbed the young lord and accused his rival of being so stupid that he could not prevent the destruction of his own territories. Ellen was ready to immediately destroy the man who had attacked her favorite lord, but Ryle asked the adventurer girl to calm down and said it was okay. Ryle agreed that he was indeed unable to stop the destruction of his territory and the expulsion of the inhabitants, and this admission caused satisfaction in Jutrid, who saw only a loser in front of him. But to save the situation and the reputation of his lord rushed the great sage. Julius of course realized that it would take him a long time to get home, and so he sent important documents to Ryle with the help of a magical bird. When Ryle saw the bird with the documents, he immediately realized that it was the sage's work and it was just in time. The young lord thanked Julius and showed Jutrid the real ownership of the mineral deposit. Jutrid was shocked when he saw the king's signature and now did not know what to do next. Sage Julius was delighted with his work and explained to Jutrid that his devious plan along with Minister Ido had been uncovered, and all corrupted deals had been cancelled, and the birthplace of Mithril now belonged to Lord Rail. Julius himself promised to return within a week, for he had a very long journey home ahead of him. Ryle was happy at this point and asked his opponent what he had to say about it. But Lord Jutrid was horrified, for he had not even envisioned such a thing and now found himself in a very difficult position. The young lord explained to his rival that he was completely wrong, and that a true ruler should not be pawns, and should be only friends. After all, Only with friends you can go through any difficulties and come out victorious. Rael promised to defend his territory with his friends and never sacrifice anyone even for the most important goals. Jutrid was furious and considered everyone present as stupid, naive idealists who understand nothing about real life. But unfortunately, the young lord did have people with him who were loyal to him, and he relied on their support. Jutrid only now imagined himself as a lonely king on a chessboard and realized how lonely he was in this life. Lord Jutrid was shocked by everything that was happening and eventually surrendered, bowing his head to the winner. In a trembling voice, the defeated lord praised his young rival for a job well done. But Lord Jutrid called it a coincidence that he had been unlucky in his choice of subordinates, and Rael was just taking advantage of the moment and trying to increase his rating. Ellen and Lou advised their lord not to listen to the words of an insultive loser, because Jutrid has achieved nothing in this life. Just at that moment, one of Lord Jutrid's guards left the room and decided to immediately inform Master Sebastian of his lord's defeat, and rushed home at top speed and immediately reported in all that had happened. The whole insidious plan was fully revealed, and Master Jutrid admitted his defeat. Sebastian realized that he was once again completely right and knew how dangerous the young lord from the neighboring territory was. Now there was no telling what would happen to his lord and how to proceed. But at that moment the high priest and the new holy maiden came to visit, and suggested that Sebastian was very worried about his lord's defeat. Sebastian did not recognize the strange masked men, and the high priest called himself a messenger of salvation. The wily cardinal explained that to save his lord would require a great power, and such a power he is located. The high priest pointed to the holy maiden and called her the Salvation. The holy maiden suggested Sebastian to use a powerful weapon and take revenge, because with the help of the holy blade Sebastian would be able to completely take over the territory of Valenza. Sebastian hesitated, but then remembered his lord's words that the Mithril would soon run out and another solution to get the money would have to be found. Years ago, Jutrid was in the shadow of his parents and dreamed of becoming a powerful ruler in the future. But Jutrid doubted himself a lot and realized that no one but Sebastian listened to him. As a result, Jutrid trusted only his steward and told him all his plans. For the sake of this trust, Sebastian was even ready to sacrifice his own life, and now taking the powerful holy weapon in his hands, he was ready for anything, not even realizing that he himself had become just a pawn in the hands of the treacherous high priest. In the evening of the same day, the chief miner was resting at home and telling his children about how he had met a terrible monster near the mine. Just when he thought he was going to die, Lord Rael's men came to his aid. Fearless girl Ellen gave him a powerful blow from what the huge monster split into several pieces and immediately died. The children were delighted with this story, but suddenly there was a knock at the door. As it turned out, it was other miners who wanted to talk urgently with their boss. It was very strange to come to visit at such a late hour, but the boys explained that they had some problems. The chief miner was shocked by the news that Mr. Jutrid had been detained in Arlent's territory and charged with forging important documents. Even the miner's wife was shocked by the news. The man of course realized that it all had to do with the rights to the birthplace of Mithril, and he also knew that Sebastian had gone alone to meet with Lord Rael a few hours ago. Though now there was no telling what would happen next. The only one who rejoiced at this news were the small children, who sincerely hated Lord Jutrid and considered him the most vile man. From such an attitude of their own children was surprised even the main miner. But the children reminded their father that these very words he said many times, and believed that this terrible man should not be their lord, because he does not care about his people. The miner decided that this was his fault, and then he remembered Sebastian's words, blaming the common people for his lord's failures. These very ordinary people did not understand the lord's genius and did not help him. The children immediately noticed their father's terrible condition and rushed to find out what exactly was troubling him. But the grown man did not want to upset his children and explained that there was nothing wrong with him and he was only a little tired. The next day, Lord Jutrid was still in Arlent's territory, but no one treated him badly, and even the young lord himself offered to dine together with fresh and delicious food. But Rael, seeing Jutrid's displeasure, decided to leave him alone and left the food on the table. Jutrid wondered why he was still here, if it would be better to take him to the royal palace, or if he should stay in this manner for the rest of his life. Lord Rael said that the only reason why Jutrid is still here is because their conversation is not over yet. Rael decided to discuss the future lives of the people of the neighboring county, for he wanted them to have a chance at a free future where they would be happy. Rael promised that he would consult with all the inhabitants and then make his main decision. But Jutrid tried to explain that people are not interested in this, because each of them cares only about themselves, because even one of his soldiers ran away. Lord Jutrid tried to explain that all these people do not deserve a decent life because they are stupid and selfish and will never try to make the territory where they live better. But Ryle reminded his rival of the words of Sebastian, who believed in his master. And can a man who deserves such trust from his best advisor really believe that his people are selfish? Jutrid, after a little thought, said that he was completely confident in his words, and even Sebastian at the moment of mortal danger would run away and try to save his own life. After this meeting, the young lord still thought about Lord Jutrid and did not know whether this man could believe in his people again, because as it turned out the events in the past were too big a shock for him. But Ellen advised him to stop thinking about it, because it was the people who had tried to steal from him. Ryle agreed, but he didn't think Jutrid was the main culprit in the situation. The young lord admitted that he would probably have become just like Jutrid if he had been in his position. But Helene thought he was just an ordinary loser who was not worth worrying about, because he deserved to live like that. Ryle decided to take his mind off the problem and see how the blacksmith was doing with the creation of the Holy Blade. But first he would have to bring Hannah with him. All the friends were looking forward to the moment when they would be able to see this magnificent weapon. The Holy Blade was truly magnificent, made of mithril. Hannah watched with interest and appreciated the high quality, while Ellen couldn't believe that such a weapon could be made quickly. In the end, Hannah decided to charge this weapon with her magic. After the magical energy penetrated, the mithril blade glowed with a bright color. Ryle was impressed, because he had never seen such a weapon before, and now he was sure of the success of his plan. Ryle decided to check this weapon after the return of Sage Julius and find out its value, but now he had to find out who would use it. Hannah, of course, considered herself the most worthy to carry such a weapon, but the blacksmith Ragudo also hoped to receive this sword because he had created it. Ellen considered herself the best warrior and of course claimed this weapon. Ryle, he was confused and didn't know who exactly he could give the magnificent magic weapon to. Lou laughed at this moment and asked her friends not to put so much pressure on their beloved lord. In the end, the young lord decided to keep this blade for himself so as not to upset anyone, although of course everyone was upset. But next time Ryle promised to make such swords for everyone. Even so, all the friends began to argue over who would be the first to get the blade Ragudo would forge. Ryle laughed and realized that he had just created another unsolvable problem. In the end, the young lord advised everyone to calm down and solve problems as they come up, especially as they should all help each other in any difficult case. Hannah and Ellen suggested that the young lord should try out his sacred sword as soon as possible, and that they were eager to see it in action. But Ryle did not know how safe it was to use it. But Hannah said that the lord should know the power of the holy sword in case of an emergency, and Ellen was sure that everything would be fine, especially if they moved far away from the city. Eventually Ryle agreed and the friends set out for the trials. As it turned out, the sky was too gray and it was likely to rain soon, so the young lord suggested that they finish the trials as soon as possible and return home. But suddenly the friends noticed a lone rider approaching in the distance and wondered who the man might be who had decided to visit their territory alone. As it turned out, it was Sebastian, and he immediately explained that he had come here after learning that his master was being held by force. Sebastian then continued to be polite and asked that Lord Jutrid be brought to him. Helena didn't believe Sebastian and warned Ryle of the danger. Ryle explained that if Sebastian just wanted to talk to his lord, then of course they could meet. But Ellen advised against it, for it was obvious that Sebastian was up to something insidious, and it was unlikely that he would be with his lord. But Ryle was sure of his plan at the moment. It was enough for him that Sebastian had come to save his lord, and that this gesture should be appreciated by Jutrid himself, who considered his men selfish. Ellen was shocked and called her beloved lord a reckless fool, for one cannot be so careless when dealing with one's enemies. The adventuress then decided to call her hunters to help in case of danger. Soon Lord Jutrid met Sebastian and was surprised to see him. Ryle immediately explained to Sebastian that no one wanted to punish his lord badly. If they could find common ground, they could solve the problem. But Sebastian stated that there was no need for that. Then with a quick movement of his hand, the goods for Sebastian pulled out a holy blade and prepared for battle. This came as a surprise for the young lord, but not for Ellen, who had been waiting for this since the beginning. Since Sebastian, pulling out the blade, promised to immediately free his lord and destroy all the enemies who dared to insidiously lure him into their territory and capture him. Suddenly all the friends felt a strong chill, and it became obvious that the blade in Sebastian's hands had magical properties. At this moment, even Lord Jutrid himself did not recognize his best aid. Lord Ryle tried to calm Sebastian and urged him not to fight, but the adventurous Helen was not so peaceful, and already prepared to fight her opponent. Sebastian was hostile and would not listen to anyone. Sebastian promised to destroy anyone who got in his way, and started swinging his magic blade. Ellen realized the danger she was facing and ordered her friends to find shelter immediately. Alina felt the monstrous power of her opponent and could not stand on her feet, but she quickly returned to her stance and promised to defend her lord. But still the adventuress realized that her blade could not cope with Sebastian's weapon. Ryle was shocked by Sebastian's power, who was able to throw away the strong Alin with just one blow. But at that moment all the friends came to the rescue and decided to defend their lord from the mad Sebastian. But Rael didn't want to risk the lives of his men and asked everyone to step back. But no one was going to do that, and Lou explained that all of them were in this place for a reason, because they are grateful to Rael for a good life. That was why everyone would work together to protect their lords and would not allow anyone to harm Ryle. The young lord was shocked by the loyalty of his men and thanked them. Ryle only now realized that he could rely on all his residents in any critical situation after all. They considered him not just an ordinary lord, but their close friend. Especially now everyone in his territory are working together to create a better place to live, and eventually I will not be able to fulfill this dream. But Sebastian didn't understand any of this and only wanted to destroy those who weren't like him. Meanwhile, the king and the sage Julius were selling their journey in the carriage and discussing all the events that were happening in Lord Rael's territory. The king was impressed with the young lord's work and wanted to see everything with his own eyes. Lord Jutrid was quietly attending to important business and filling out documents. At that moment there was a knock at the door and a request for permission to enter, and Jutrid, recognizing the voice of his aide, of course allowed it. Sebastian brought his lord tea and offered him some rest. Jutrid explained that it was not necessary to take care of him all the time in this situation, but Sebastian explained that he was feeling fine because Lou had magically healed his wounds. Sebastian then said that all the residents were feeling fine and enjoying their stay in Arlent's territory. Also, everyone was happy to solve all the problems and stop the silly feuds. Sebastian then asked what they would do next. Lord Jutrid stated his desire to rebuild his own territory, and now he was writing down all the ways he could think of to use with his men. Sebastian was interested and asked if there were any really good plans, but Jutrid after a bit of thought admitted that of course he wasn't sure because now the situation was critical and they had to start over. But in any case he was not going to give up and was ready to work for the sake of the inhabitants who believed in their lord again. Sebastian looked at his lord with interest and admitted that now he sees how much he has changed. Lord Jutrid agreed with his chief aide and explained that he is grateful for these changes to Lord Ryla and his men, because only when he met them he realized how much he was wrong in the past. Meanwhile, the friends were strolling through the city streets and Ellen congratulated her lord on his success, but as always advised him not to act so rashly in the future. After all, he should think of his own safety first. Lou agreed with the adventurous girl and asked Ryle never to act so recklessly again, because she was very worried about him. Then the girls began to argue as always, and this only amused the young lord. Ellen was of course right and reminded her lord several times about the times when he ignored her advice and acted too dangerously. But just at that moment the great sage Yule returned with his majesty the king. Ryle was happy to see his chief advisor, and Julius already realized that there were some interesting things going on, and so they needed to talk immediately about everything that was happening. Helen was shocked by the appearance of a very familiar old man, and the rest of the friends also did not understand who exactly had arrived with the wise man Julius, but gradually everyone began to guess that this man was not a simple. Julius, enjoying the surprise on the faces of his friends, said that this man was the king of Atrest Muchen. Then his majesty said that he knows the controversy between the two territories in which his minister was involved, and as king he feels responsible for it, and therefore he thinks to fix it. First of all, the king wanted to know the details of all the people who were involved in these events, but all the friends were still in shock and did not understand why the king had come to them. Everyone gathered in the main room and discussed for a long time the events that had taken place earlier, and after that the king said that now he was grateful for the details and could put the whole picture together and find out the options for future development. Even the king thought about what kind of punishment should be applied to Lord Jutrid, because he had committed a rash act and endangered other people. But Ryle stated that he did not want to punish Lord Jutrid, because now he realized what he had been wrong to marry. He has indeed realized all his mistakes, and henceforth he will surely be a good city for his people. So now it is necessary not to punish him but to help him, and then he will move on and develop his territory. The king thought about Ryle's proposal and why he said that now he understands everything that the sage of Julia told him, because Ryle turned out to be a really noble and generous man. For he thinks first of all of the welfare of others and is willing to show his good-heartedness even to his own kind. This is a splendid quality that even the king himself does not have. But in any case, it must be understood that Mr. Uhtred must be punished for his crimes, and as king he must show other subordinates means responsibility. After all, if other people start committing similar crimes and feel impunity, it will lead to the beginning of huge conflicts. As a result, His Majesty decided to punish Lord Uhtred and permanently deprive him of the title of nobleman. So now he cannot dispose of his territory and must start a new life wherever he wants. And instead of him is appointed the new lord of these territories, Mr. Rael. The young lord was against this decision, because it was too harsh a punishment for Uhtred, and in this case he would lose everything he held dear. But Uhtred said that he agreed with the king's decision and would feel at ease if his territory was under Rael's leadership, and he was sure that his people would live well. Everyone present was shocked by this change and did not know how their future together under the leadership of a single lord would turn out. But His Majesty the king continued to ponder over the whole situation. The king knew from the sage Julius that Rael is now very busy with his territories and is trying to develop them as much as possible, so he has no additional opportunities to work on other territories. But in any case, now there is no one more qualified than Lord Rael, and so he himself must find a suitable candidate to work on the new territories. The king has offered to select a suitable person and immediately assign him to fulfill the duties in the territory of Uhtred Manor, and any suitable applicant for the role could be chosen. In the end, Rael of course did the most honorable thing and proposed to appoint Mr. Uhtred as the territory manager, because he would be best able to handle this task. The king agreed, but warned that Uhtred would only be a steward. The former Lord Uhtred thanked for the trust and for the great opportunity to rehabilitate himself in the eyes of his people, and then promised that he would do his best. And then the king proposed to discuss another very important thing that he had wanted to talk about for a long time now, and this topic would be much more important than the previous one. Rael was thinking and waiting for something interesting. His Majesty asked if this was what Rael really wanted, that his workers and he among them got 2 days off a week, and if he wanted to keep these rules for everyone. Rael agreed to do what he had been doing before, but it all sounded like a new job offer, and the king eventually decided to see the estate and the results of the young lord's work for himself. The Demon King was on the territory of the demons, did not understand what was happening, because he felt as if he was in the distant past, which he did not expect to see. The territory of the demon was completely covered with magnificent bright colors, and all his subjects were well fed and perfectly rested. Mao tried to understand what is the secret of this success. Also, the king of demons was stunned by the order that reigned in his palace, because even all the books and documents were deserved on perfectly clean shelves, and the books, as it turned out, were sorted by content. Raisin was happy to meet his master who had returned, and Mao tried to find out exactly who was in charge of the order. Raisin explained that it was a girl named Nicole who did all this and the Demon King, but decided to meet her immediately. Mao asked the modest girl is it really she was engaged in organizing the entire territory of the demons while he was away. Nicole and decided that she did something wrong and apologized for overdoing it. But the king of demons called it a great job and thanked the girl for her efforts, because he used to not even know that in his domain there is such a great employee. Mao advised Nicole to always contact him with any questions and then he will help. But then Nicole asked the Demon King for permission to ask a question and inquired about what was going on in the Arlent's territory, because Mao had been there for a long time. But after everyone came back, the lazy monsters started to work actively, and it was as if they had completely changed. All the monsters are now motivated to work and do everything for the improvement of the territory of demons. And most likely the reason was the king of demons himself, who gained some important knowledge in the neighboring territory, and it was he who was able to motivate his monsters for future development. Mao laughed and admitted that all his subordinates have really changed and now he feels happy, because he has been trying to achieve this for many years. But then he told Nicole that he had met a very interesting man named Rael, and he was the one who had changed everyone. So Nicole can go to visit him herself and learn everything in detail and get the necessary skills for even more development. Rael will be glad to meet a new experienced worker and teach him new professions. But the girl Nicole explained that she cannot really go to another territory. After all, she has a brother who is under a curse, and this is a serious obstacle for her. Nicole explained that in fact it is a very terrible curse, and if it is not controlled, the brother's body will begin to devour itself and eventually he will die in terrible agony. But fortunately her beloved brother was able to stop the development of the curse a little bit, so thanks to careful care for him he continues to live. But she still hopes to find a way to get rid of this magical disease. There is also a danger that this curse can be passed on to anyone else by touching them, and so she is afraid to leave her brother unattended so that no one else gets hurt. Then Nicole told how the two of them traveled together in search of a way to lift this terrible curse, but unfortunately all their searches were unsuccessful. And because her brother was cursed, everyone ignored their requests for help. When they were refused help, it made her beloved brother very upset, and he cried. But she couldn't even hug him and comfort him, because who better than a moment could have contracted a terrible disease. But eventually she managed to find a place and settle in the demon territory, and now her main goal is to find a way to break the curse to help her brother out of his misery. The Demon King asked for her brother's name, and it turned out that his name was F. Then Mao advised to go with his brother to Lord Rail, and maybe he will help to get rid of the curse, because you cannot lose hope. Especially in that territory there is one very powerful man who has healing magic. Demon King gave hope to the girl, and she promised to immediately finish all her work in the territory of demons and together with Mao to go on a journey. But now Nicole wanted to tell this great news to her brother and make him happy. As soon as Nicole left the royal hall, the succubus girl said that this sweet naive girl is very brave if she traveled for many years together with her terminally ill brother. Also, Miriam paid attention to the fact that Nicole is an elf and she has never before met elves in the territory of demons. After all, elves are a very close tribe by nature, and they do not like to mix with other races and rarely appear in other places. The Demon King suggested that perhaps these elves were banished from their home because of the curse imposed on his brother, and therefore Nicole has been working hard for a long time to save the native man, and so this girl should help in any way. But after some time, upset, Nicole again visited the King of Demons, and Mao did not understand why she came so quickly. After all, they have not finished important things. The elf explained that her favorite brother was missing. The Demon King did not understand how this could happen, because her brother was seriously ill and was under care. But Nicole herself did not understand, because her brother always stayed home and waited for her while she worked. Miriam tried to calm the upset elf and promised that they could solve this problem. But Nicole was too upset, because she decided that her brother decided to put her out of her misery and leave her forever. The Demon King also tried to calm the girl, and then promised that they will definitely find him. After all, he could not go far. But first they need to find out exactly what F looks like. Now ask the girl not to hurry and tell everything in order and detail. After all, together they will be able to find a seriously ill brother and be sure to help him get rid of the curse, because everyone should help his neighbor in difficult situations. Then the Demon King ordered Miriam immediately called all the demons present to organize a search party. But the succubus was so happy at this moment that it surprised Mao. Miriam explained that she had never seen a Demon King hug someone so tenderly before, and it was very sweet. But the Demon King knew that if his good friend Ryle was here, he would have done the same thing, and therefore, it is necessary to help this upset young elf, and then they will gain her trust. Miriam continued to have fun and said that it seems that not only ordinary demons were influenced by Mr. Ryle, because even Mao has changed a lot. But the Demon King advised not to be distracted and immediately go in search of his lost brother. After all, they had little time. Meanwhile, Ed had already reached the dense forest and felt that this magnificent atmosphere reminded him of where he was born. He felt a little more at ease in this environment and felt at one with nature, hoping to relieve his sister of her problems.